Here's what I say first.
Bro, like, listen, all right, I don't like Stanley. I think the only person I have been was Stanley.
And Nate, Stanley doesn't state the obvious, like what the
You don't think one parent influence is detrimental?
I literally said they need to understand that a one-parent influence.
But like I say, man, you ain't really got to let these people bother you like that. If they want to beef with you, it's called Stanley versus the world.
And just assume their character by stereotype?
I think people do that every day.
Okay, I didn't ask you. What
do I think it's okay?
Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. Yes, it has happened again and again. That's 2 mass murders in less than 24 hours, one in North Carolina, the other one in Michigan. Now, since as we know in the black media, these kind of incidents don't get anywhere near the kind of white media attention that they deserve, so here's the recap on it.
We are following breaking news overnight. At least 3 people are killed, 8 others injured after a gunman opened fire on a crowd in Southport, North Carolina. Police say the suspect pulled up to the waterside bar on a boat. People in the area were asked to stay inside their homes while police investigated, and authorities there say they do have a suspect in custody at this time.
Michael, we are here in Grand Blanc Township, Michigan. That is about an hour northwest of Detroit. We are here because around 10:25 this morning, officers got a call that a man, 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford of Burton, which is just the town over, ran his truck into the front of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. After he rammed his truck into the front of the church, he opened fire at the hundreds of people who were there for service. Police did confirm with us that 10 people were shot, 2 people have died, 7 people are in stable condition, 1 is in critical at the moment.
The mass murderer in North Carolina was arrested alive, no surprise, and no word on whether the cops chose to take him to Burger King first. As for the mass murderer in Michigan, that one, amazingly, was killed. Now, it seems to me like it was just the other month that there was a church attack in Michigan. Wait, that's because it was just the other month that there was a church attack in Michigan, and that one didn't take place in Detroit either, or Flint. It took place out there in the suburbs, on the outskirts, you know, where this kind of thing never happens, except that it keeps happening in those places. With 2 mass murders in less than 24 hours and the suspects being non-black, you can already guess what the white media, hell, with the dominant society's analysis of this has been. It's all a mental health concern. That's what they're all saying. Mental health. Oh, state mental health funding got cut. It's mental health. I tell you, it's so stressful out there. When the shooter's black, on the other hand, it doesn't matter how poor he is, how much stress he's under. He's just a violent Negro. You know how those people are. But on the other hand, when the suspect is not black, it's always mental illness. Surely there must be something wrong with him. A sentiment that we never hear at any other time. And what's the death toll? At last count, the mass murder in North Carolina on Saturday night was 3 dead, 5 injured. And the one in Michigan yesterday, 4 dead, 8 injured. And body counts matter because when a gangbanger in Chicago shoots someone, it's black people out of control. On the other hand, when it's someone from the dominant society who kills 3 people and injures 8, suddenly it's unfathomable why they just can't reckon it. The world is simply going crazy. This stuff happens twice in less than 24 hours. That's not crazy. That's just a normal day. And yet it's treated as crazy and insane because that's how racial narratives work. It's never based on the crime. It's always based on the color of the perpetrator. Times like this, one has to wonder, where is the wit and wisdom of Charlie Kirk at, he and his followers, to go ahead and comfort us all with the knowledge that black on black crime, etc., or white people are being hunted down by black people nationwide, except Charlie Kirk was also killed by a white man, and his followers and online fans are angry at black people because of that. Why? Because they saw him as the champion of a racialist myth that they just loved. It tickled them no end, and his death served as an inconvenient reminder that all of those anti-black narratives and talking points and tropes that he pushed and made a lot of money pushing were false from the very beginning. They never existed. This society gives itself permission to sweep these daily massacres, the real ones, under the rug. It only pulls out its phony, insincere concern if there's some black person to go after. Then they can treat the matter as a criminal justice issue. And what they've done is, to in effect, give these mass murderers a license to kill. These psychos understand full well exactly how the white media's racialist narratives work. They know that no matter how many school children that they slaughter in elementary school, no matter how many innocent people they kill in a movie theater, no matter how many innocent churchgoers that they slaughter at the local synagogue or church, it's always going to be treated as just a freak one-off, even though it happens multiple times every single month. Now, in these two cases from the last couple of days, both of these killers are apparently military veterans. That's one you can expect the white media to play up a lot. There's going to be basically them saying, well, we don't know, was this their time in the service? Was it just because of what they had seen if they had been under fire? Or why is it there more money and time and resources being devoted to veteran services? Well, for the folks in the white media who might want to pull out that talking point, don't expect to get much support from the orange man. Trump's already been on the internet saying that this was an attack on Christians, even though the individuals who did it were Christians themselves, or at the very least, they definitely weren't Muslims. The mass murderer in North Carolina reportedly filed numerous lawsuits against the city. Now, the white media like to report on that, and it's all part of their humanizing these animals that they like to do. It's a matter of make these killers out to be human beings. Don't forget they're human beings, and the guy was in the military, and no doubt his neighbors and co-workers thought the world of him. That's what they're doing here. He filed numerous lawsuits with the city. Oh, if only somebody had paid attention to him and listened to him. That's the spin that they want to put on it. And as for the other mass murderer in Michigan, he's dead now, so I guess it doesn't matter if he had any lawsuits pending or not. But the truth of the matter happens to be, if this guy did, what the hell's that got to do with anything? He should be told, well, whatever the issue is, you need to cope with it. It's a hard life, etc., etc. But just like everyone else in the dominant society, this Michigan killer had been socialized that when he has a grievance, real or imaginary, the world is supposed to move for him. Something's supposed to happen. And the same thing with that mass murderer in North Carolina. He filed his numerous lawsuits. As far as he was concerned, if he couldn't get justice in the courts, justice being if he didn't get the outcome he wanted, well, then he was going to take out his anger on the entire town. They would be made to pay one way or the other. The last couple of weeks, this country's been getting some undeniable examples of why it's so dangerous and deadly to buy into the anti-black narratives peddled by people like Charlie Kirk. He was the one running around saying that black people were hunting down and killing white people for sport. Meanwhile, he himself was killed by a white man, and the other two mass murders that followed were not carried out by black people at all. These two gerbils that have been in the news, they wounded and killed more people in 24 hours than were killed and wounded during the entire 3-day weekend in Chicago. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. That's a cold, hard fact. Of course, the per capita incompetence will have trouble with that because it's actual math. There's no real point in waiting for information about either of these creeps' criminal past to be brought to light. Besides, things being what they are, it won't be long at all until there's some other mass murderer from the same background who does the same thing. And by the way, you notice that I haven't even bothered to speculate on whether or not either of these two mass murderers has the usual anti-black rantings and ravings, whether or not one of these guys or both of them happen to be the usual anti-black racist who, because they couldn't get their hands on some black people to kill, they just decided that anyone would do. We've certainly seen that one enough times, haven't we? So if it turns out that these guys had some sort of manifesto, as the white media will call it, to try to make them sound like they're learned and educated, when it's just a bunch of rantings and ravings, is anyone going to be surprised at all if something like that gets unearthed? Of course not. These crimes are allowed to happen. One thing's for sure, these mass murderers certainly couldn't be carried out like this if the dominant society decided they didn't want them to be. That's the reason why the Orange Man is sweeping this under the rug and saying, oh, this is just an attack on Christians. He simply doesn't want to be bothered, and he's not alone in that regard. And I'm sure that we'll have the usual bottom feeders who infest my comment section who will be whining and complaining, come on, dude, why is it that you're reporting on like this? Why do you have to talk about it that way? You're politicizing a mass murder. You can't do that. That's so wrong. That's so immoral. Really? Charlie Kirk himself said it was absolutely necessary to politicize the murder of that Ukrainian woman. He didn't care about all of the thousands of Ukrainian women who have been killed in Russia, not by a black man on a metro train, but by a white man in Moscow. Charlie Kirk predictably didn't care about the thousands of dead Ukrainian women killed by Vladimir Putin. And the reason why is their deaths were meaningless to him. They couldn't be used to serve his political ends. So the thousands of Ukrainian women who lie dead today, they're just collateral damage. They're simply a statistic. They don't matter. What matters is whether or not there's a way that you can use it as a means to attack the black community, can use it as a springboard for yet another anti-black policy. Because that's what they were teeing up before Charlie Kirk got murked. And Charlie Kirk himself couldn't wait to spread the lie that black people were hunting white people and black people were killing every white person in America. There's a ton of people in this world and in America in specific who have been socialized to believe that when they tell lies, especially lies about black people, these are just victimless crimes. But the reality is when you lie about the racial reality in America, you open the door for all kinds of real crimes. Racialist lies are not a victimless crime, and if you make the mistake of actually believing them, then you might inadvertently wind up the victim of a crime, one that might not have seemed all that obvious to you, but which everybody else could clearly see coming. So, as unfortunate as these incidents have been, they're not surprising at all. This has become the American way, but then again, it always has been. And that being the case, tragically, it won't be long at all before we have yet another headline just like this one, because you had yet another privileged psycho who this society decided to give easy access to firearms, but absolutely no access to accountability. And when you have a social climate like that, where there's already phalanx of individuals who are prepared to line up and give all kinds of excuses and obfuscations for this kind of thing, well, that makes it where everyone becomes nothing more than a target in a shooting gallery. But the people who make these excuses, they better be careful, because they have no idea which one of these lunatics they're giving the green light to go on a massacre. While it's true that these mass murderers may have a rich fantasy life, and in their own sick minds they see their victims as being nothing more than object lessons, just targets for them to gun down to prove the greatness of their wrath or their petulance or whatever, the truth is that these politicians and these pundits who make excuses for them, they also live in their own realm of make-believe. And in their minds, well, the bodies that hit the floor will never be their own. At least that's what they tell themselves. But that's one hell of a gamble that they're taking. If they decide that they're going to roll the dice like this every single day, they can do that. But it only has to come up snake eyes once. Good day and be one. I'd like to.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Stanley versus the World. Everybody, please make sure you hit the like button. And please make sure, if you're new to the channel, you subscribe and share it out. Well, it has been an interesting 2 to 3 weeks. And to answer your question, CKJ3, Ock Nation did a show. I didn't watch it. I just happened to see the title of it. And I may actually even go back and watch it just to see what his initial reaction to it is. Be Brave, as far as I can see, isn't doing a show. And I doubt that. I don't think the anti-black blacks will touch it, other than Ock Nation, and who knows what his spin on it is. You know, this thing with Be Brave and street crime. He seems to think that street crime is like bringing this country down. I'm going to argue that it's actually church crime. You know, the recent spate of church crimes. And, I'm scanning through this CNN article, how the mass shooting and the devastating fire unfolded at a Michigan church. Apparently, right here, the chapel on McCandless Road, a quiet stretch dotted with houses near a sprawling golf course and lake, is the latest place of worship devastated by America's unrelenting gun violence, from a Catholic church in Minneapolis to a synagogue in Pittsburgh to a Sikh temple in Wisconsin, now a Mormon church. And then there was another church that was attacked in Michigan a couple months ago. For a Christian nation, we, a bunch of churches are being attacked. What's up with that? I thought we were a Christian nation. I have all kinds of smoke for the Be Braves of the world. And I was on T's show for a while last night. And, she specifically talked about this. Look, I don't know what to say other than racializing crime is not working. Okay. Really, to be honest, comparing crime across races, it doesn't seem that productive to me, other than just the sheer naked, racialist point of view. This country is fundamentally racist, and comparing comparative murders seems to be one of the results. Let's not solve crime. Let's not try and prevent crime. Let's racialize it and say one type of crime, one race committing murder is worse than the other race committing murder. Like Be Brave has said, just retardedly, to be honest. At least white people keep it in their homes. How the fuck is that better? In a way, it's worse. I mean, if you're shooting up your wife and kids, I don't see how that's any better than stray bullets on a street corner. It's all bad. Soul Provider, this title, I forget the comedian who said it, and my memory's getting worse as the years go by, but yeah, I thought that line was hilarious. Basically it was jokes about getting older. So thank you for that. It was a good title. And I don't know that that's absolutely true, but it makes a good joke. So this guy, the Mormon church shooter, was a Marine veteran. Authorities reported that the suspect, Thomas Jacob Sanford, was shot and killed by police shortly after the incident. 9 individuals were treated for injuries following the attack at Henry Ford's Genesis Hospital. By the way, that reminds me, you guys remember a few months ago that 27-year-old black guy who shot up the NFL offices. It turns out they did an autopsy on him. Turns out he did have CTE. If you recall, one of the most premeditated suicides I've ever heard of. He shot himself in the heart because he wanted to preserve his head so it could be examined. And again, it turned out he had CTE. So I meant to talk about that over the weekend and forgot about it, but all this murder and mayhem reminded me. So the other incident this weekend was just amazing because, when I lived in Newport, Rhode Island, I used to go to these dockside seafood places out on Narragansett Bay quite often. So a guy pulling up in a damn boat, and he did a sail by shooting. He just pulled up in a boat and shot the place up. Now, I wonder what Be Brave would say about that. It's not a drive by; it's a sail by. These guys, the chickens are coming home to roost with people like Be Brave. You know, I just shake my head. So let's listen to this little news report here.
On Saturday at approximately 9:30, members of the Southport Police Department were dispatched to cause of shots fired with multiple injuries at the American Fish Company at 150 Yacht Basin Drive here in Southport. Reports came in rapidly of a boat sitting in the waterway, reports of a subject shooting multiple patrons of the establishment. Unfortunately, 3 were wounded fatally. We have 5 injured that are area hospitals still receiving care. The boat fled the ICW toward the Oak Island Bridge. Shortly after 10 p.m., the Coast Guard observed a single individual matching the description of the shooter, loading their boat at a public boat ramp in the area of Northeast 55th Street on Oak Island. Coast Guard crews detained the suspect, who was held at the Oak Island Police Department before being turned over to several members there, including the Southport Police Department, Brunswick County Sheriff's Office, Marine Fisheries, and the Oak Island Police Department. We believe that this was a targeted location. He acted alone. This is highly premeditated from what we're seeing at this time, and we feel there are no other threats to our community.
I don't know what's going on. And then we'll go and I guess we could listen to this. Why not? Let's just listen. This is the Michigan shooting.
Killed and 8 others wounded yesterday during an attack on a church in Michigan. Authorities say the suspect, identified as 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford, drove a vehicle through the front doors of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township before he began shooting at worshipers attending Sunday service. Police believe the suspect then intentionally set fire to the church, reducing much of the building to rubble, where investigators say more victims may still be found. Officials note that as many as 3 improvised devices were also found at that scene. The suspected gunman, who was killed after exchanging fire with police, is from a nearby town and has a military background. He served in the Marines for 4 years and was deployed to Iraq, according to a Marine Corps spokesman. At this hour, authorities are still working to uncover a motive for the attack, but the FBI says it's investigating this as an act of targeted violence. President Trump reacted to the fatal shooting on social media yesterday, calling it horrendous, describing it as yet another targeted attack on Christians in the U.S. and writing, "This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately." We're going to have a live report from the scene just a little while from now on Morning Joe. And turning then to the big story in Washington, today President Trump will meet with 4 top congressional leaders at the White House, just one day before the deadline to avoid a government shutdown. Nothing like wait until the last minute. Republicans have been working to advance a temporary funding bill that keeps federal spending levels flat. But Democrats are demanding an extension of health care subsidies, as well as the reversal of cuts Republicans made to Medicaid and other health programs earlier this year. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer spoke about the odds of a shutdown yesterday.
Donald Trump has taken a go-it-alone approach from the very beginning of this Congress. And unfortunately, my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle have behaved not as a separate and co-equal branch of government and a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch.
One sec here. I just happened to, while this news thing was playing, just happened to go over to Be Brave's channel just to see if he'd had anything to say. He's been doing real sporadic shows, so I don't really keep up much with him anymore. But this is a show from about 2 weeks ago, and the title of it is "White Violence: Blacks Observe What Whites Want Done About It." And what do whites want? What do whites want?
Because they ain't got any whites that are going to house them.
So
nobody's going to have them sleeping on their fucking couch.
Let's hear what he has to say.
The only way whites get away with doing murder and getting away with it.
What have I done here? I was playing around with the volume control on these tabs. Now I can't figure out. Let's see. Let me reload this page.
topics are dumb. I'm going, what the fuck?
You know what?
Stay
I
the fuck off
fucked up
this.
this
Everything's
tab.
okay, man. I just
So
fuck outta
let's get
here.
rid of the.
So I'm glad he put you
tab.
in timeout, Slick. And at least he's, getting it out of his system. I don't need any fucking going back. What the fuck? Just stay the fuck off this. Everything's okay, man. I just
Yeah,
fuck
he's
outta here.
whining about something or another. Let's see, can I
Slick
get
Rick, don't
to?
ask for cash apps or stuff, folks. I'll ask for them. See, what we want done about white violence is we want them electrocuted, put to death. We don't care if it's a kid. That mass shooter, you've got people saying, no, there's probably stupid whites that'll say something stupid, but ain't nobody going, poor him, he had a rough life. No, whites are going, wait till he gets of age and then fry him,
See, this is typical Be Brave. You know what? Yeah. We want to concentrate on the punishment, but not the prevention. And I honestly think, and it's been observed, in editorials that I've seen that, and Charlie Kirk actually, said that, hey, some of this violent crime, like a church shooting or two, hey, that's the price we pay for freedom. And to me, that's just warped as fuck. Even if you think that, some things shouldn't be voiced, just out of sheer respect for the victims of these crimes. And, who cares if you want to fry somebody? A lot of these types of crimes, the shooter winds up either being killed by police or taking their own life. Once again, Be Brave is just kind of, I don't know, just fucking kind of dumb with some of these observations.
And so that's so there's been some white craziness going on lately, and I'm going, oh gee, do I have to back off of what I say when I say blacks are tearing up the fucking culture? The one group doing it by themselves? No, not quite. We got a long way to go, folks. You know how where do people claw to live near? White people. Where do people claw to get away from? Black people.
You know what? They say that racism and racists always adapt to keep their message consistent. Has there been a little bit of white craziness? Well, yeah, but yeah, you know what? It's not surprising that Be Brave will always find a way to be racist or anti-black racist. So I was just curious to see if he had come up with something a little bit new. But perish the thought, folks. He's still the same, bottom-feeding racist he always was, at least as of 2 weeks ago. So just to catch up, the Southport, North Carolina boat shooting kills 3. Nigel Max Edge is charged with murder. Let's see. Oh, another former U.S. Marine. Authorities in North Carolina have identified Nigel Max Edge, a former U.S. Marine with a documented history of mental health challenges, as the suspect who is currently in custody without possibility of bond and undergoing police questioning. So I think even with these folks who have documented mental health issues, I keep hearing, well, we got to do something, about mental health issues. I have not seen any move towards that end. I think a lot of people. He wears a mask and sunglasses. There's some lame excuse. I seriously think that he thinks that he's some sort of masked hero, the racist Avenger. So my newfound hero, Dr. Stacy Patton, wrote an essay, I guess yesterday, or posted it today to Substack. Suicide Turned Outward: Why White Men Are Turning Their Self-Destruction into Mass Violence. And it's a long essay, but I will read as much as I can before, I have any voice issues or anything like that. And I'll drop the link because I just scanned through it. Stacy Patton is hilarious, and she has this weird sense of irony that she writes very effectively into essays, and I appreciate this woman. She teaches at Morgan State. Hey, by the way, Fred, she teaches in the same department that Jared Ball does, their School of Communications or whatever it's called. So I don't know if she's ever been on the Black Liberation Network or whatever Black Liberation Media, I think is what they call it now. I don't really watch it that often, if at all. So anyway, Stacy Patton writes, every week the headlines blur together. A church in Michigan left in ashes, a North Carolina waterfront bar turned into a war zone, a Catholic school in Minneapolis where children never made it home, an ICE facility in Dallas. You know what? I forgot about those two in Dallas last week. Pierced by sniper fire, a political rally in Utah where a bullet silenced a conservative gun rights activist, and. Different cities, different motives, same profile. White, male, armed, deadly. The news pretends each act is an isolated tragedy. That's actually a good point. This past month, stop acting like, this is a singular event. There's a pattern emerging here, and the pattern's been there, for decades, in my opinion, ever since the Kent State, not Kent State. Years ago, there was a shooting from some guy scaled a tower. I think it was the University of Texas or somewhere, started picking people off from a water tower or something like that. This sort of stuff has been going on since I was a kid. So the news pretends each act is an isolated tragedy, a troubled man, a random eruption, a community blindsided, but line them up side by side and the repetition is too precise to ignore. These aren't anomalies, they're a drumbeat. Churches, schools, bars, government buildings, nothing is sacred, nobody is immune. Perpetrators are acting out with the same choreography and playing variations on a script that ends with bodies on the ground and their names immortalized in headlines. Humiliation is the through line. Strip away the headlines, the manifestos, the mugshots, and what you see is white men who cannot live with being ordinary, ignored, or denied. White masculinity in America was built on the guarantee of centrality, the right to be heard, feared, and obeyed. When that illusion frays, humiliation takes its place, and humiliation, when combined with access to assault rifles and an internet full of cheerleaders, becomes combustible. And inevitably, and I agree with the inevitability, enter Donald Trump. He is not the author of this script, but he is its loudest hype man. He takes that humiliation and translates it into a politics of grievance. He tells white men their despair isn't failure, it's theft. He tells them their rage isn't weakness, it's patriotism. He baptizes their sense of collapse as a holy war. Trump doesn't hand them the gun, but he hands them the permission slip to kill. He turns their humiliation into a rallying cry, their despair into his campaign platform, and their death wish into applause lines. And I agree with that. This whole DEI debacle that these guys Well, I just discovered Stacey Patton, I'd say about a few months ago. Um, so, I read an essay of hers that wandered in. You know how Substack sometimes will just say, "Oh, hey, try this group of authors and see if you like them. Subscribe to their page." So that's how I became aware of her. He is not the author. Let's see. I read that the assassination of Charlie Kirk proves this. Here was no random eruption in a mall or classroom, but a sniper attack staged at a political rally. What we witnessed was violence designed as theater. The accused, Tyler Robinson, was reportedly obsessed with Kirk, surveilled his movements, and turned grievance into spectacle. This wasn't just about killing one man. It was about sending a message by inscribing grievance onto the national stage. And while Robinson didn't appear to seek his own death in the same way as other shooters, the logic still holds. Collapse turned outward. Humiliation converted into performance. Violence is a last-ditch claim to visibility. Whether in a schoolyard or a rally podium, the impulse is the same. Make sure the world cannot look away. I was actually on T's show last night, and Kev Stutters came up on the panel, and I guess I shooed him away. But he tried to pull that bullshit about Tyler Robinson being trans, or well, he had a trans, partner or something like that. Dude, you can try that trick with a lot of people who might agree with you. But Tyler Robinson, people like Kev Stutters, people like Be Brave, they are going to blame it on everything except the individual who pulled the trigger. Now, it's so funny because conservatives are famous for saying, well, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, trans as a concept doesn't kill people. Trans didn't pull the trigger. Tyler Robinson did. It's the same sort of thing. They want to blame this stuff on anything other than the actual person who pulled the trigger. And the truth is that kid grew up in a MAGA household. And the other thing that Kev Stutters wanted to say, well, Utah Valley University is the most liberal university in Utah. And I just started laughing. I'm like, liberal university in Utah is laughable. It's a state school, I assume. And it wasn't some private liberal arts school. It was a public institution. And I've been to Utah. Believe me, UVU might be liberal by, say, BYU standard, but like compared to the rest of the say compared to a California university, no, it wasn't some bastion of liberalness. So eventually Kev, decided to leave and not come back. He said he'd be back and didn't come back. And we all understand, or at least I understand, why he didn't come back. He wasn't winning these arguments. It wasn't Bob's channel. I wasn't going to let him get away with that bullshit. So this is suicide turned outward instead of a private exit. It is a public performance. It is despair weaponized into punishment. It is a white man who feels invisible, deciding that if he must disappear, he will do it in a blaze that makes his enemies, his community, his whole country remember his name. The bullets are not just aimed at bodies. They are aimed at the world, and he believes betrayed him. And America lets him. Because while black and brown people get beaten, choked, shot, and imprisoned for existing, these white men are given the longest leash. Their rage is rationalized, their humanity over-explained, their grievances get echoed by politicians and pundits who call them lone wolves instead of what they are, domestic terrorists staging a national suicide note. If these killers were black or brown, there would already be a state of emergency. Entire neighborhoods would be under occupation, uh, like DC. Politicians would demand surveillance, deportations, bans, registries. But when the shooters are white men, again and again and again, the country never declares a national crisis. There are no calls to profile them, no government commissions to investigate the white male mind, no urgent congressional hearings on the threat of humiliated white masculinity. The media wrings its hands, writes humanizing profiles of the shooters, and then moves on. Why? Because this country has always needed white men as its blunt instrument. The system doesn't see them as a threat to America. It sees them as America's enforcers. The slave patrol became the sheriff's office. The lynch mob became the jury. The vigilante became the soldier. Violence by white men has never been treated as a pathology. No, it has been treated as tradition, as duty, as defense of the nation. That is why the same system that calls a 12-year-old black boy with a toy gun a threat will call a white man with an AR-15 a troubled loner. White America's violence doesn't just terrorize everyone else, it devours itself. Most white homicide victims are killed by other white people. That's a fact that Be Brave never talks about. That's not unique because violence is usually intra-racial, but only one community has its pain turned into a slur. Black on black crime is wielded like a cudgel to shame, stigmatize, and criminalize, while white on white crime is never named, never treated as a pathology, never held up as proof of cultural failure. She is absolutely right about that. White on white crime never gets talked about. Like Be Brave has said many times in the past, well, at least with white people, they keep that violence at home. I'm like, and I laugh every time I hear that kind of rhetoric. It's like, dude, so shooting up your family is better than I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So why is this proof of cultural failure? Because admitting it would collapse the myth of white order. To say white on white crime would mean confessing that white communities are not immune to the same cycles of violence they project onto everybody else. It would mean admitting that mass shootings, domestic abuse, vigilante justice, and overdoses are all symptoms of a culture unraveling. The system can't do that, so it scapegoats Black people, immigrants, Muslims, LGBTQ folks, and the so-called radical left, anyone but the men actually pulling the triggers. So you all get, pretty much the gist of it. White people, and I keep picking on Be Brave, but they're the Mayo monkeys. They're all kinds of people that I come into contact on YouTube every now and again. We got a culture in denial. We got Trump being the lead, the denier in chief about the problems with American culture in general. Vivek Ramaswamy pointed out, how Americans worship mediocrity, and got, basically shunned for pointing pointing out the obvious. Aramio Frimpong has said in the past, we need better white people, and I believe that wholeheartedly. White America, one of Be Brave's shows that I noticed when I looked at his channel was, John Galt tells why white culture is superior. And again, I chuckle at shit like that. I don't see the superiority of white culture over the past month or so with all these mass shootings, church burnings, sale-by shootings. I don't see the superiority, and the seams are showing in American culture, and it needs to be addressed quickly, or it's just gonna get out of control. if it isn't out of control already. So speaking of out of control, Oregon sues Trump administration over order to deploy troops in Portland. I have no clue why Trump is doing this. I guess I don't even know. I didn't know there was any big trouble in Portland, but let's listen to this article.
You're listening to Oregon sues Trump administration over order to deploy troops in Portland, a news story written by Mariana Alfaro and Dan Lamoth and read by an AI-generated voice. Oregon filed a lawsuit Sunday seeking to block President Donald Trump's efforts to send National Guard members to Portland after Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered the deployment of 200 of the state's troops for 60 days. Hegseth's plan became clear in a memo dated Sunday and comes a day after Trump vowed to send troops to Portland and to immigration detention facilities around the country. The 200 members of the Oregon National Guard activated are expected to support those plans, according to Hegseth's memo. It is not clear how soon the troops will be showing up in Portland, but Hegseth cited the same authority used to deploy the National Guard in Los Angeles this summer. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek, Democrat, said that she had spoken with Trump on the phone Saturday and that she had made clear to him that there was no public threat requiring military intervention in Portland or any other city in Oregon. Despite this, and with all evidence to the contrary, he has chosen to disregard Oregonian safety, she told reporters Sunday. This is not necessary, and I believe it's unlawful. In response, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, Democrat, filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration over what he described as the unlawful federalization of the National Guard. The suit was filed with the city of Portland. Rayfield told reporters he also plans to file a request for a temporary restraining order to pause the White House's actions. The president is either purposely ignoring the reality on the ground in Portland to score political points, or at best is recklessly relying upon social media, Rayfield said. By ordering the troops' activation, Trump is once again running into a complicated dynamic. Activating the National Guard in a state run by a Democratic governor who objects to the decision. The president clashed with California Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat, in June when he seized control of the California National Guard over the governor's objections. Trump deployed about 4,000 Guard members and about 700 active-duty infantry Marines to Los Angeles after a few cases of violent protests against immigration and customs enforcement raids. He did so under authorities in Title 10 of federal law, which prohibits troops from performing any law enforcement missions. Newsom also sued Trump, and in early September, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration violated the Posse Comitatus Act by placing the troops in law enforcement roles. However, the judge temporarily paused his order, which a federal appeals court left in place until arguments could be heard in greater detail. Abigail Jackson, a White House spokeswoman, said that the actions were lawful, and it came months after what it contended were months of violent riots where officers have been assaulted and doxxed by left-wing rioters. In his memo Sunday, Hegseth cited Trump's claims that numerous incidents of violence and disorder have recently occurred and threatened to continue in response to the Trump administration's immigration enforcement actions. In light of these incidents, the administration deployed National Guard members under Title 10 to temporarily protect ICE and other U.S. officials. Protesters have been demonstrating for weeks at an ICE processing center in Portland in objection to Trump's immigration enforcement efforts. The Department of Homeland Security on Friday said that rioters in Portland, Oregon have repeatedly attacked and laid siege to the facility. Demonstrators have gathered outside the facility as far back as 2018, when Trump's family separation policy inspired protests and an encampment. This past June, the Portland Police Bureau declared a riot after demonstrators blocked the driveway and threw objects such as rocks and bricks. Portland police arrested more than 20 people after multiple federal officers were injured. But this weekend, the streets outside the Portland ICE facility were mostly empty, aside from a small number of peaceful protesters. Many residents posted on social media lively pictures of residents enjoying the city after Trump labeled Portland as war-ravaged. The president had told the governor Saturday that he was worried about protests outside the ICE facility, according to Kotek. She said she left with the impression that the two would continue their conversation at a later date. But on Sunday, she received notice that the White House would be invoking Title X to activate the Oregon National Guard. After that, she contacted to the White House to express my disagreement and disgruntlement with that decision, Kotek said. Michael Birnbaum and Todd C. Frankel contributed to this report.
All right. Well, I'm waiting to see what happens in Chicago. I'm curious to know why Trump hasn't done what he's doing to Portland to Chicago, but I think he wants to avoid a showdown with Pritzker, who's a potential well, he could potentially be running for the Democratic nomination in 2028. So Trump, confident ahead of Monday's showdown, says Democrats' position makes shutdown likely. I just don't know how we're going to solve this issue. Well, we always want to hear that from a president. We just don't know how we're going to solve it. Oh, there's a man of conviction. Oops.
Congressional leaders to avoid a government shutdown. Now, there's also new details about the
Morning,
unusual
Lupin.
mass gathering of top military brass in Washington this week. CBS's Willie James Enman is at the White House with the latest developments there. Willie James.
Jerika, good evening to you. Today, the president told CBS News a shutdown appears likely unless Democrats back down on their demands over health care, adding negotiations are at a stalemate.
With a Tuesday deadline fast approaching and with it a partial government shutdown, both sides are digging in. Democrats say funding for health care must be part of the negotiations.
We want to find bipartisan common ground to find a spending agreement that avoids a government shutdown and actually meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, and their economic well-being.
But Republicans want to pass a temporary spending bill that would fund the government through November 21st.
The purpose of the meeting is so that the president can assemble the four leaders, the two top leaders in both chambers, to come in and have this discussion. And I talked with him at length yesterday about this, and he's going to tell Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to stop playing political games.
The latest funding debate different this time, with President Trump threatening mass firings in addition to furloughs. And this weekend, the president making a new threat to send troops to Portland, Oregon, which he calls war-ravaged. In a social media post over the weekend, Trump said the troops would protect the city and ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists. On Sunday, Oregon officials filed suit against the Trump administration, challenging the deployment.
There is no insurrection or threat to public safety that necessitates military intervention in Portland or any other city in our state.
And Jerika, we're also learning the president will attend a meeting on Tuesday with hundreds of America's top military leaders who will travel from around the world to Quantico, Virginia. The gathering of this scale and such a short notice is rare, if not unprecedented. Jerika?
Willie James Enman at the White House. Thank you.
Another mass shooting over the weekend. Yes, there was another mass shooting in this country.
You know what? I'll just go ahead and forego it because we've already covered it. But Gail says it right. Another mass shooting, which isn't funny. I'm not laughing, at the tragedy of it. What I'm laughing, why I'm laughing is just the sheer ridiculously of folks not dealing with it. The president is too busy. Why doesn't the president address this? That's actually what I'm asking. You got two in 24 hours, including, a guy who rams his truck into a church, opens fire, then burns the building down. Why is the president not addressing this? I have not seen anything of a president's reaction, and I do have an X account. I guess I could go on there and see, but usually if the president makes if he addressed it, it probably would have made national news. So I'm just assuming that he didn't. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. This was interesting. Last week, U.S. State Department revokes Colombian president's visa after remarks at New York City protest. So what the hell was he protesting? I think he was protesting basically, Trump's deportation policies. But let's see if this addresses this video here. I don't see volume control.
President Trump taking center stage at the United Nations General Assembly today. The war in Ukraine, immigration, climate change, the role of the United States across the
Let's
focus
see.
it was.
Right. And well, Donald Trump's main audience is always his own base,
Okay, now this isn't going to cover the story. So it says here the U.S. State Department said it was revoking the visa of Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who had traveled to New York this week for the United Nations General Assembly. Earlier today, Petro stood on a New York City street and urged U.S. soldiers to disobey orders and incite violence. Oh, shit. Well, yeah, I guess we know now why his visa was revoked. The State Department said Friday in a post on X, "We will revoke Petro's visa due to his reckless and incendiary actions." That is a bit incendiary. Petro, who traveled to New York for the UN General Assembly, participated in a pro-Palestinian demonstration earlier Friday. In video clips posted to social media, he can be heard appealing to American soldiers, urging them to disobey orders from President Donald Trump. Based on the video clips, there did not appear to be any uniformed U.S. service members in the audience listening to Petro. Well, you know what? I'm not gonna criticize the State Department for revoking. I'd revoke it too. Disobey orders. This is interesting, and I meant to talk about it last week. Trump set to bail out Argentina, irking some in the America First camp. There are a couple things that I have to say about this America First stuff. First of all, why is he giving unilaterally $20 billion in aid to Argentina? Where does a president get the authority to do that? And then the other thing I'll talk about in a bit is Trump wants to basically reclaim Bagram Air Force. Bagram, is it an Air Force base or the Bagram base in Afghanistan? And I was like, what? So you want to put troops back into Afghanistan? I'm like, okay. I don't get that. The excuse is it's, close to China. Okay. You're just going to be putting troops in harm's way. But let's listen to a little bit of this. If you'll recall, President Milei, I think that's how you pronounce his name, of Argentina, is pretty much their version of Trump. So of course, Trump doesn't want to see a fellow authoritarian, fail.
Stop settling for weak sound. It's time X-Boom. And for a limited time, save 25% at
and read by an AI-generated voice. President Donald Trump's decision to give Argentina a $20 billion financial lifeline has stirred anger among some of his most loyal supporters and raised questions about the limits of his America First
No,
approach
Black
to the
Bear,
global
most black
economy.
people are not
The president's
anti-gun.
customary
Don't know where you
allergy
get
to
those
using taxpayer
statistics
money
from.
to help other nations makes the Argentine rescue especially noteworthy. Since taking office in January, Trump has slashed U.S. foreign aid programs, slow-walked military assistance for Ukraine, and demanded that close allies like South Korea and Japan pay for a greater share of their defense. But the administration last week showed no hesitation about saving Argentina from its latest economic misfortune. It's not that the Latin American nation is vital to the global economy. Though it was among the world's richest countries in the early 20th century, Today, its annual output is roughly equal to Michigan's. The U.S. intervention stems from a blend of political and economic considerations. Trump is a fan of Argentine President Javier Milei, a libertarian whose attacks on government spending and red tape have made him a folk hero to the American right. This month, however, Milei's party was trounced in provincial elections in Buenos Aires, raising doubts about his ability to retain a legislative majority in October 26th midterm elections. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Milei needs a bridge to the election so that he can win a renewed mandate for reform. I don't think there's too much doubt that President Trump himself personally has instructed Secretary Bessent and the Treasury Department to come to Argentina's aid and support President Milei because President Trump wants to support President Milei, said Douglas Redeker, chairman of International Capital Strategies, which advises institutional investors. By trying to solve his allies' problem,
I wouldn't even
Trump
say
is
most.
creating fresh headaches for himself. American farmers, among the president's most loyal supporters, were outraged this past week when Argentina suspended its 26% export tax to encourage China to place a massive order for soybeans, even as Washington was preparing to help Milei. Amid Trump's ongoing tariff war with Beijing, American farmers have seen their once.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop that here. I don't. I'm surprised there's not a lot more pushback with Trump. Where's he getting the 20 billion from? He literally the Supreme Court last week literally supported Trump doing a pocket rescission on, I think it was $4 billion in foreign aid, but Trump has found a couple 20 what was it, 20 billion? I think it was four, maybe damn it, I'm getting that number wrong. But Trump can basically do a pocket rescission on foreign aid that Congress authorized, which is problematic in and of itself. But he has 20 billion to basically give this Malay dude just from the Treasury Department. He's basically taken 20 billion out of petty cash as a bridge loan to to Argentina. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with MAGA? And dude, I'm going to talk about the unitary executive towards the end of the show. And Black Bear and Fred, I'll go and see if I can find some data. I would be willing to say that most Black people are for gun control, but gun control is not the same thing as anti-gun. Okay. And just anecdotally, in my 60 years, most of it spent in the South, I've literally not run into anyone who is vehemently anti-gun. Not that, you know, that's a topic that comes up a lot, but I've, you know, in the South, Black people and guns have been, you know, guns and Black people have been interacting for years. For, I would even say centuries, but no, I don't buy the argument that Black people are anti-gun. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, at Stone Mountain, I forget the name of the group. Fred, you may remember, there was like some group, some Black group who was pro-gun, basically went out and did a counter rally to the Klan, if I recall. I could be getting the details wrong, but I mean, their whole like groups, like gun clubs. So I don't agree that gun control is anti-gun. No, gun control is not anti-gun, and it's not racist. Black Bear, hit the link. You and I might want to go round and round a couple rounds here, because don't bring that fucking stupid bullshit over to my channel. Keep it over on CT's or John Galt's. You will be met toe to toe with this weird anti-black stuff. Black people are not anti-gun. Gun control is not anti-gun. It's basically responsible gun ownership. And quite frankly, after the past couple weeks, not sure that that argument isn't bolstered. You know, we got 2 Marines who are supposedly suffering from PTSD. There are some people who should not be having guns. I'll put it that way. As a matter of fact, I mean, the Black Panthers, I mean, blacks actually have a history of being pro-gun, to be honest. What's up, Black Bear?
What's going on, Stanley? How am I coming in?
Oh, you sound good.
Awesome. So y'all I want to have this gun control conversation with you.
Well, it's going to be real brief because I got more news articles, but sure. What do you have to say about gun control?
So I believe that gun control is anti-gun.
Why?
And it's racist.
Oh, well, please feel free to give me the whys. Why do you feel that way?
So I know you said that because of the after shooters that's been happening lately, that's more of a reason for more people to have guns. And I
I'll
believe
never
that
buy that up.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, you go ahead and explain it. I won't even bother rebutting it because I'll never agree with that.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, I just wanted to have a conversation. That's all.
Go ahead.
I'm not trolling or nothing like that. I'm just
No. I'm not. Have at it. I don't think you're trolling. I think you actually believe it, and I'm honestly trying to understand. I don't buy into that. You know, the good guys with guns are an antidote to the bad guys with guns. You know, people. You know, this guy, for instance, pulling up to a bar on a weekend in his boat and shooting up the place. I mean, how would a good guy with a gun stop some random attack? It's the first time I've ever heard of a sale by shooting. How is a good guy with a gun gonna stop something like that?
Stanley, so you don't believe that a good guy with a gun
Okay,
would stop that?
what I need you to do is answer my question. I gave you a specific example. Tell me how a good guy with a gun would prevent a sale by shooting at a bar on a Saturday night. I mean, who would ever think that, hey, I'm at a dockside bar called the American Fish Company? I mean, I would never think to carry a gun. Well, how is a good guy with a gun going to stop a Charlie Kirk assassination? Or how is a good guy with a gun gonna stop what happened to that church in Michigan? How is a good guy with a gun
I think having
gonna stop a
security.
sale by shooting?
I think having security at that church, at churches, will actually help and prevent that from happening. And not all situations can be preventable. We know that. Me and you both know that. I am a concealed carrier.
Okay, what I need you to do, I hate to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
What the question was is how is a good guy with a gun going to stop a sale by shooting? The security at the church, I think you're probably right to a certain extent.
Yes, sir.
However, some churches are poor. They might not be able to afford security. And, you know, at least as of, before
they
this
have those,
weekend, going to church on a Sunday, no one, it's such a rare occurrence. But again, I want to concentrate on how do you stop some random shooting at a bar? How is a good guy with a gun going to stop something like that sale by shooting?
Well, I don't think that situation could have been stopped if someone else had a gun, or maybe it could have. Someone probably could have stopped him, or if he knew that was an open carry bar, maybe he wouldn't have went to that bar.
Okay, North Carolina North Carolina is one of these southern states like Georgia where I live. Dude, guns are everywhere. So I'm sure somebody in that bar probably had a gun, but dude, some dude sailing up in a boat and lighting up the place. There are going to be a couple people dying before anyone can return fire for starters. Okay, and let me see if I understand this. I thought the rhetoric was the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Okay, so that sounds like a good guy with a gun is a prevention method. I don't necessarily agree. I don't agree with the rhetoric. I don't think a good guy with a gun is going to stop an NFL office shoot up. That kid who turns out he had CTE, walks into the NFL offices and shoots it up. How is a good guy with a gun gonna prevent something like that?
I think security would have prevented that, Stanley. I really believe that and not in all cases that a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. Not in all cases. I'm not saying 100%, but I'm saying in most cases, a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. You telling me
Totally disagree with that.
Okay, you telling me if you put an armed security guard at a school and a guy that has a gun, he see that armed security, that doesn't give him second thought to not going in that
Have
school?
you ever heard of Uvalde, where there were school resource officers? They were too afraid to get involved. There is already such a thing as school resource officers, at least in Georgia. I don't know about Parkland,
Yeah.
don't know about Sandy Hook, but there are good guys in play. Winder, Georgia, which is about 2 hours away, because you got to go through Atlanta to get there from where I live.
Mhm.
I know there are resource officers in Georgia schools. I know that for sure because I just had a high school, my son graduated from high school a couple years ago.
So Stanley, when
So
was the last time?
listen to what I'm saying and let me finish.
No, you did.
There are school resource officers in Georgia schools, and Winder, Georgia still happened. Kid went in there, killed a teacher and a couple students. So, I mean, these are actual local police tasked to schools in some cases. They got guns. It didn't prevent that school shooting. And I know I'm being persnickety, using a single case study.
Right.
But I suspect school resource officers, Uvalde is a good example of where school resource officers did not prevent that mass shooting.
So Stanley, I stay in Arizona, right? We have an
Mhm.
open carry. This is an open carry state. When was the last time the state you live in? Because I know you said it's open carry.
I live in Georgia.
When is the last time you guys had a school shooting or active shooting?
Literally, Winder, Georgia happened maybe about 6 months ago. So Winder, Georgia, about 2 hours away from where I live. I live in Georgia. Resource officers are at Georgia schools. I'm 100% positive of that because I just had a kid graduate from a Georgia public school.
Okay.
So Florida, Parkland happened in Florida, and shit, it's wide open as far as guns in Florida. They hand them out at birth practically. So school shootings happen all the time when they're good guys with guns there. So I'm not really beating up on you. Please don't think that I'm doing it. I just think that good guy with a gun, that's just cowboy mentality that doesn't meet that rubber doesn't meet the road. Okay, it sounds cool when Wayne LaPierre says it. It's some it's some NRA rally, but the reality is These shootings happen and come out of nowhere. And, you know, if you're trying to avoid being sprayed with bullets by an AK, you may not even have a chance to pull your good guy gun. I think the rhetoric is empty.
So to control that, how do you control that, Stanley?
I don't think you can. I think gun control would be a start. I think we ought to be a lot more proactive in keeping people with PTSD, or, you know, you hear all the time, like that kid in Winder, Georgia. Again, this is an example. And too bad I don't have a producer, because I would have him or her look up the Winder, Georgia story. But let me give you an interesting detail. Winder, Georgia is a place. It is between Atlanta and Athens, Georgia. I've been through Winder plenty of times. Years ago, I went to the University of Georgia. So, you know, you used to have to go through Winder to get to Atlanta. The kid that shot up the school, the 45 was like a Christmas gift or something from his father. A year before this kid shot up the school, the FBI interviewed the kid and the kid's father because somehow or another, I can't remember whether he had threatened the school before, but the FBI basically was satisfied after the interview that the father would be a responsible gun owner and, you know, lock up the guns or, you know, whatever, you know, to keep a child. And if I recall, he was 14. But they gave the kid a gun for Christmas. But the FBI had interviewed this kid and said, okay, well, we're satisfied that you're not a big threat. A year later, he shoots up the school, kills a teacher, etc. There is no way in a country like the United States that you're going to prevent these sorts of tragedies. But my opinion is that we can attempt to mitigate them. And even if it doesn't work, you know, in the military, they will teach you as some sort of leader, no decision is worse than a bad decision. Okay. And we are not trying anything so far to address this issue of white mass shooters. Okay. We will concentrate on the hood, you know, and demonize Black folks, rightly so, for the level of violent crime in the inner city, but we will justify these long-range shooters. Okay, what does Trump do? He doesn't address the actual tragedy and what can we do to keep these guns out of crazy white people's hands. He'll blame it on the left, just knee-jerk. And what did Charlie Kirk himself say? Hey, you know, some of these shootings are the price of freedom, which I think is just, you know, borderline perverse.
So Stanley, I know I made another. Oh, go ahead.
Here, this is Fred is nice enough to look up this story for me. Georgia high school shooting suspect was previously interviewed after FBI received reports of online threats. The FBI interviewed this kid and said, hey, we're satisfied that he's not really a threat. And then a while later, and as I said, these are the 4 kids. Let me pause this right quick. These are the 4 people, 2 teachers and 2 kids shot at a Georgia school, and these schools have resource officers. So a good guy with a gun did not prevent this tragedy. And it's one tragedy, but I suspect that a lot of these school shootings, Uvalde is a perfect example where once the shooter even started shooting, the cops, like people were losing their jobs. You know, cops are losing their jobs because they just stood outside while the dude was just shooting up a classroom no one had the courage to go in. And it, it's understandable that,
Now,
hey, you know
Stanley,
what, I got a wife and kids.
is that
Hmm?
gun is that a need for gun control, or is that a
Yes.
need for better officers?
Okay, no, it's not a
Okay,
need for better officers.
okay.
And like I said, even if you have we got to do something. Okay. And gun control to me seems at least something we should try to see if it mitigates any of this. We're
We have
doing nothing except
Stanley, we have
saying, hey,
plenty
we
of
need,
gun control. We have plenty of
I'm
gun
sorry.
control. I said,
No,
Stanley,
I don't think we do.
we have plenty of gun control in the United States.
I don't think we do. I think we need more.
What more?
Universal background checks that gets pushed back all the time. What are they? The
I
auto
know
loaders.
I come from a
There's
state
some
of
there's some types of things that wind up in lawsuits. What's the one that there are a couple things I'm thinking of. There's some mechanism that'll turn a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic. Um,
I mean, it's very
um,
expensive to get a
bump
fully auto.
stocks, bump stocks, bump stocks. Hey,
Bump stocks do
people.
what?
Well, they basically allow you to rapid fire
No,
bullets.
Stanley, that's not true.
Okay, I don't care about any of that. Let's not get into the weeds. We do need to do something, and more gun control, universal background checks. Bump stocks
We
do
already have all
allow
that stuff.
rapid
Stanley.
fire of ammunition.
All that stuff is going to continue to happen. If you give people acid, they're going to throw it on people. If you give people knives, they're going to stab people with knives. We have all those controls that you just said. In the state of California, which I'm from, you have to, after you buy the gun, you got to wait 10 plus days to get it.
And you find a problem with that?
No, I'm not saying that's an issue, Stanley. I'm saying that's a gun control right there.
And we need more controls.
I don't think we need more.
Well,
I
you and I will
disagree
just
with you, Stanley.
disagree on that.
Yeah. Respectfully.
But anyway, we're going to have to do something, okay? Because in the past 2 weeks, you know what? These mass shootings, these white guys have outcompeted the blacks for headlines. I don't want to hear Trump talk about Chicago. I want to hear him talk about, how we stopped shooting up, dockside bars.
Yeah, I think white people need to get their white on white crime in check, and I think black people need to get their black on black crime in
Well,
check.
I think the first step in checking it is actually realizing it's a problem.
I think everybody do see it as a problem, Stanley.
I
mean, I don't need a white person to come out and say, "Hey, we have a problem." You see the problem because there's dead bodies on the ground.
Well, how about we get a president? How about we get a president call it a problem? That way it'll get a little bit more national attention.
Okay, so you just want Trump to come out and say white on
No,
white.
I want Trump as president to be just as vehement in calling out this problem. Instead of blaming everything on the left, I want him to blame the actual shooters. And if the shooters have mental health issues, as everybody's, all the right especially seems to go, well, this guy was crazy, but it's kind of an isolated event. I don't think you can call these events isolated anymore. I think there's a pattern. I agree with Stacey Patton. I think there is a pattern that people like Trump and the right in general are refusing to acknowledge. So he needs to address the issue of murderous young white males. Yeah, in a pithy phrase, yes. Oh yeah, you know what? I forgot about direct sales. Like you can get around pretty much any control just with private sales or gun show sales. So um,
No, that's not true. Even at gun shows, you got to pass a background check, so that's not true. Because
no,
I do gun shows. Go ahead.
I don't think that's consistent across all the states.
No, Stanley, I'm in that field, so you have to clear a background check at a
In
gun
all
show.
50 states?
I'm talking about in Arizona, and I know in Georgia you
Okay,
have
well
to
then
too.
I'm talking about all 50 states. I know private gun sales, you don't have to do any paperwork. You can pass down a gun from father and son. Which I mean, if it's an heirloom or something like that,
Right.
it might be a little too invasive, but the kid, Tyler Robinson or whatever the kid's name was, the Charlie Kirk shooter, he used like his grandfather's rifle. And anyway, I mean, we're not going to solve the problem, bantering on a YouTube panel, but I think the first step is the president addressing this national crisis. I think we have a national crisis on our hands, and it was years before the opioid epidemic became a problem. And I argued that the problem has existed in the United States for quite some time. And I think it's a valid point that until rural white people started going by the wayside with all the drug use, that's when it became an epidemic. Same thing with guns. It's going to take another 2 weeks of what has happened over the past 2 weeks for white people and the white right, as Professor Black Truth calls it, to even admit that there's a problem. And this problem has been around for decades. These school shootings, they don't even care. They don't even care if their own little white angels get shot up. So anyway, enough of this foolishness. Fred, thank you for those quick articles. You are always a lifesaver. So any final words on the gun issue, Black Bear?
No, just a good back and forth. I just wanted to just tell you some of the thoughts that I got, and you told me some of your thoughts. So have a great rest of your show.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for coming up. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So let's see. I was going to talk about, well, I did kind of talk about this. Trump makes announcement against Taliban. So Donald Trump has announced that his administration is working to reclaim Bagram airfield from the Taliban, noting its strategic importance and criticizing the 2021 withdrawal under President Joe Biden. He emphasized the base's proximity to key regional security concerns, but withheld from providing a clear plan. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid, I'm massacring the name. I probably have to sit here for a couple minutes to figure it out. Anyway, the Taliban spokesman denied claims that China controls Bagram and said no agreement allows foreign troops. So I don't know how or why, for that matter. Maybe somebody can tell me why reclaiming Bagram is necessary to national security or anything like that. It escapes me. This is interesting. Tony Blair has never quit the Middle East. Now he could run Gaza. So Blair is a key player in planning for the rebuilding and governance of the Gaza Strip if a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is fully signed. So they're considering him to be like some sort of governor. Let's see. Blair 72 has emerged as a key player in planning for the rebuilding governance of the Gaza Strip if a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas is finally signed. according to officials in Israel and the United States familiar with the discussions. A post-war Gaza plan significantly crafted by Blair, a stalwart of center-left politics, has been largely embraced by President Donald Trump and will be discussed at a White House meeting Monday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, according to diplomatic officials in the Middle East familiar with the deliberations, who, like others quoted in this article, spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe private conversations. So Blair's blueprint is reflected in the Trump administration's 21-point Gaza peace plan, a copy of which has been obtained by the Washington Post, including its vision of a new international body to administer Gaza on a transitional basis. Interesting. So we'll see how that turns out. It actually kind of sounds promising. You know, what if Trump actually does bring peace to the Middle East? He'd still be a dickhead, but at least he would have his Nobel Peace Prize. So speaking of gun control, oh hey, what's up, Uncle Fatty? How you doing?
Hey, doing, Stan, man?
Pretty good. How have you been?
So here's how messed up the system is, bro. When I was going through Hunter's Ed with my ex-wife back kind of late 90s, and this is still true today when I went through Hunter's Ed with my kid like 3 years ago, we got sheriff deputies that have to go to Hunter's Ed to be able to buy a tag to go out into the woods and harvest an animal.
Right. Well, man, I'm not sure I follow you.
But they can patrol the streets with a sidearm.
Oh. Well, I mean, don't they take like safety type courses at the
Sure.
police academy?
Sure. And you would think that would qualify them to be able to go out into the woods and harvest an animal, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't know. I would think, you know, going out into the woods is kind of a different environment.
Oh yeah, for sure. You're not, you know, you're not necessarily, you know, the hunter being the hunted type of thing.
Right.
But it's pretty nuts. I can literally go down to my local gas station as you're walking out the door. There's your little nickel's worth newspaper, your classified ads, 2 full pages of anything you want.
Right. Well, don't they sell?
I go over to Washington, and it's a totally different story. You know?
Right.
And when we have individual states' rights, which I'm definitely all for states' rights, but you know, there needs to be a national standard of some sort. There needs to be a.
Well, I think you could get away with a national standard because the Second Amendment covers all 50 states. I mean, you just basically spin legislation off of the Constitution. Now, I'm not a lawyer, you know, but I would think that you could cover all 50 states and basically use the Second Amendment as cover. There was something else I was going to say about hunting, and I can't think of it now.
Yeah, the bump stocks were what you're talking about. It's just a spring-loaded deal in the stock, and in essence,
Doesn't it allow you to pull the trigger faster?
Not necessarily.
Or am I wrong on that?
It allows your finger to stay in the same spot, and for the unit itself to just move.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. So the gun is moving around the trigger.
Exactly.
Basically, the gun is basically your finger applies the pressure, but the gun is actually activating the trigger mechanism.
Right. And once you get that thing bumping back and forth, then it's doing its thing. So.
Right.
Anyways, just figured I'd come up and say hi. I got to haul my hot rod over to the freaking muffler shop this morning. So.
Hey, let me ask you one last question.
Yeah.
I seem to vaguely remember that in Wyoming, you can actually like get guns at convenience stores. Is that true?
What was that? I lost you there for a second.
Is it true? I seem to recall my wife telling me years ago that in Wyoming you could literally like get a gun at a convenience store.
Not a convenience store, but for the most part, yeah.
Anything found in
Yeah,
that
like a
car?
drive-through, like a
nothing in it,
drive-through
see?
gun store.
All right, where's the key for that truck? Get that thing warmed up for a minute.
You want to follow us and we'll show you, or what do you?
Yeah, I got it on the map too. So
Because we'll go out and then we'll go down.
here you go. Check this out, buddy.
Oh, nice. Holy shit, that is nice. Wow.
Yeah. Be nice if it had a muffler on it, though. You know.
Is that yours?
It's my dad's hot rod.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, for the most part, you still got waiting periods when you go to the store. But when you do private sales, that's all. There's nothing there. You don't even need a bill of sale or a receipt or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'd really respect
to each
that.
their own, but the mechanisms need to be put into place where you have a legitimate storage systems. When parents aren't responsible and they leave shit laying around.
Oh my God. You know what?
Folks running around with all the rhetoric that we got going on these days.
Right.
It's kind of no wonder,
I agree. Like my father has a thing for guns. Always has. But you know what? Number one, we knew not to fuck with his guns. But he kept them under lock and key. It was not, something he'd be laying around. You would find laying around. So
absolutely.
You just got to be more responsible.
All right. I better put on my CDL cap and be legit for a little bit. I'll catch up with you in a little bit, buddy.
Yeah, it was good seeing you. Don't be a stranger.
Sure. Much love to all the chat and whatnot. Be excellent
Take
to
it
each
easy.
other and party on, dudes.
What's up, dirty dude? What's up, Frost? How you doing? So, Florida vows legal action against any efforts to block TPUSA chapters on campus. Attorney General's office targets public schools after alleged reports of discrimination against TPUSA chapters. Now, apparently, they're wanting to put these chapters in public schools, which I find troublesome. It's like, I guess they want to do an after school club or something. Now, they don't want CRT or, as if CRT was actually taught in schools, but what they will do is put Turning Point USA clubs. I just find that highly hypocritical. How about let's keep politics out of public schools? How about just educate them, in as neutral a stance as you can? Keep the politics out of public schools. It's only, dude, TPUSA on college campuses could turn into turmoil as Charlie Kirk's assassination proves. Why bring this sort of stuff to kids that are already, hyped up on hormones? High school boys can be pretty violent sometimes, and you want to bring in politics? I think that's a fucking crazy idea. And of course, only in Florida would something like this be even dreamt of. I think Florida is literally a problem.
Florida vows legal action against any efforts to block TPUSA chapters on campus. The Florida Attorney General's Office of Parental Rights announced on Thursday that they will be taking legal action against any public schools that block Turning Point USA TPUSA chapters. Attorney General James Uffmeyer posted on X about Florida's new effort to protect TPUSA chapters, standing beside April Carney, a member of the Duval County School Board. We've been hearing reports up and down the state public schools not allowing TPUSA organizations to be formed on campus. This is discriminatory, it's wrong, and we will not stand for it. Our AG's Office of Parental Rights will be bringing legal action where necessary to ensure we are protecting the rights of students to organize, associate, and engage in speech and debate, Uffmeyer wrote. Carney said that students and parents should know the Duval County School Board is currently revamping student-led organization policy so that there should be no issues with opening a TPUSA chapter and other clubs. There should be no issues with you opening a Turning Point USA chapter, he pointed out. Uffmeyer announced the formation of the Office of Parental Rights in April, the first in the nation initiative established to provide justice to parents and families whose rights have been violated. Florida's office has not confirmed with Fox News Digital any official reporting of high schools or other education institutions attempting to block TPUSA chapters. The announcement comes after TPUSA saw a surge in support since Charlie Kirk's assassination.
TPUSA?
After Kirk's massive memorial service on Sunday, TPUSA announced that it has received more than 120,000 inquiries from people wanting to start new campus chapters. Oklahoma has also moved to support TPUSA chapters. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters pledged Tuesday to establish a TPUSA chapter in every high school. Kirk's wife, Erica, has been named the new CEO and chair of the board for Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA currently operates 900 official college chapters and approximately 1,200 high school chapters.
I also want to play this interesting article. It says here, Oklahoma State Superintendent announces TPUSA chapters for every high school. Dude, this just sounds ominous, to be honest.
Charlie's vision was to have a high school or college chapter on every campus in America, and that's going to happen. We are on the cusp of that happening. It's a ton of work to set up all those chapters, but I can tell you people are flooding in. They want to see this happen because Charlie was a man about a vision bigger than himself, about a purpose bigger than himself. And, you know, the whole team embraces that vision now, and the whole country does. And so we're going to make it happen, and we're going to spread free speech, the values of Turning Point all across the country.
Andrew Colvette of TPUSA. And my next guest says that he wants to make Turning Point USA's goal a reality by establishing a chapter at every high school in the state of Oklahoma. Ryan Walters is Oklahoma's Superintendent of Public Instruction, and he joins me now. Ryan, thank you very much. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So my first question to you is, I know you were an AP history teacher, government, U.S. government AP teacher. So I know you know how the government is constructed probably way better than I do. So let me ask you this, because it strikes me that understanding the impetus to want these chapters to spread all across the country, and let's put up the numbers, because the outreach of young people who are requesting these chapters is enormous. 60,000 inquiries before Sunday, 120,000 post Sunday. But should it be established from the state government down into the schools, or should it be something that's driven by the request and the desire on the part of students from the bottom up, so to speak?
Yeah, no, good question. No, we do have the request from the bottom up. We've seen a record amount of students from every county in our state that want a chapter. We have teachers that want chapters, parents that want chapters. So we have folks in every school district say we want one. What we have seen are teachers unions, woke administrators trying to block them from happening. And that's what you can't do. This is an organization that's about free speech, creating free thinkers.
Could you imagine a high school club teaching that Black people are hunting down white people and killing them? Charlie Kirk said something on that order. that black criminals are hunting down white people. Could you imagine something that rhetoric being put into high schools? Can you imagine the fucking race relations in a high school that's doing that kind of rhetoric? I just cannot believe the irresponsible behavior of this Trump administration. Dude, I agree. I agree with Dirty Dude. This shit is gonna get dangerous. Yeah, you know what, Dirty? People should be up in arms about this. Leave the politics to the family structure. Do not bring this politics into high schools. Next, they'll be wanting to put them in they'll be in elementary and middle schools. I'm telling you right now, this is getting more and more fascistic sounding.
Patriotic Americans. This is exactly, I mean, Charlie Kirk's vision is tremendous for the country. I've never seen anything like it here in Oklahoma. The mobilization here, and frankly, it's obviously a much bigger national movement. And you see Charlie, his life taken so horrifically. President Trump almost had his life taken horrifically. These figures have stepped up on the national stage to continue this fight. We've all got to step in and make sure that we're winning this fight for the future of the country.
So this is not a mandate from the state education department, just so we're clear.
Yeah, look, we're going to have them in every school because we've already got requests from every school. So that makes it very easy.
You've received requests from students at every single school in Oklahoma. I just want to play this from a former DNC spokesperson.
And frankly, I can see the education department, what's left of it, basically withholding funds from schools if you don't have a TPUSA. Like if you have a TPUSA, we're gonna give you $100,000 or some deal like that. This is just fucking ridiculous.
Who is pushing back on the idea? Let's watch.
I do not think that we should be forcing ideology on our children, especially in public schools. After the shooting of Gabby Giffords, we were not forcing ideology in Arizona about guns. After a Minnesota state legislator was killed and her husband was killed in their home by an anti-abortion activist, we weren't going into Minnesota schools and trying to promote abortion in those schools.
So what would you say to her, Ryan?
I'd say that's laughable. These are the people that force drag queen story hour on your kids. They force critical race theory on your kids. They force the most radical woke agenda in the country on your kids. The teachers unions and the Democrat Party did that. And then when students and teachers say, we want a turning point chapter, that we haven't seen anything like this before. We are excited. We want to take the country back. We want kids to think freely. We want them to understand American values.
Yeah, we want to take the country back to 1845, the good old days.
Unions and the Democrats cry foul. You've got to be kidding me with this. We've never seen a Marxist ideology pushed on kids like that party has for the last decade.
Well, there's a lot of evidence of that, and we have reported on it to a great extent. So it's going to be really interesting. I think it's great that kids across the country and across the state of Oklahoma are super interested in learning more about history and learning about debating. And I think it's a very positive move across.
So TPUSA is going to be a debate club? High schools already have debate clubs. At least some of them do. And Dirty Dude, you and I are agreed on this. In my opinion, we've already turned the corner. Unless I think the only thing that's standing between, a full-blown unitary executive / authoritarian government is next year's House elections. and it might be too little too late. We're already there. And I think I think someone like a Heather Cox Richardson might disagree with me. But I think we're there. I don't. Hey, we the slippery slope. We're already at the bottom of it. We have slid. What's up, ICU? Let's see. Critical race theory should teach how best to defend against the violent blacks. Then you, like many other far right motherfuckers, actually don't understand what critical race theory is. It literally wasn't built to defend anything, wasn't built to assault anything. It came out of the legal academy, and this far right rhetoric. It's going to get worse before it gets better. That's really my prediction. So Fred, our producer Fred, has sent this Charlie Kirk clip. It's from indisputable Rashad Ritchie, his show. So let's listen to this clip. If Fred sent it, it's bound to be a doozy.
Biden regime, they are stuffing foreigners in the reddest communities across the country, in small town red America. But Emily, just so we're clear, the Haitians that are in Huntsville that are raping your women and hunting you down at night, it's only going to get worse unless Donald Trump wins. A new report from Fox News shows that across the border, 13,000 people convicted of murder, 15,000 people convicted on the non-detained list, meaning they're currently roaming free around our country. And that does not include the 2 million gotaways. And since those are the border jumpers who avoid border encounters, it's safe to conclude the proportion of convicted criminals is even higher than that, 2 million plus of them. Thank you for being a member, and stay safe in Alabama, and pray Trump wins, or else things are going to get really bad. They're going to get even worse. There will be hundreds of thousands of Haitians brought into Alabama, and they will become your masters.
They will become your masters. I wonder if these people realize that Haiti doesn't actually share a border with the United States. But that's kind of another question. That's another topic for another day, I guess.
With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show.
It is important to remember, though, how this racial conspiracy theory about the Haitian immigrants came about. It was based off of the lie spread that claimed that Haitian immigrants had been stealing and eating dogs. We remember the soundbite. Remember Trump at the debate talking about eating dogs, right? Kirk is making this a major talking point, however, but it wasn't long ago before he was mocking pet owners. Look at this.
Let's see.
Hold
They
on,
want pet
I got it.
bereavement leave.
Hold on, wait. So if your pet dies?
Yeah, like if Sparky dies, you get to take
There you go.
time off
There you
for
go.
your pet
Sparky,
funeral.
no.
Hopefully Sparky
okay,
uses
they were
It's so weird. What a horrible human. I don't know. What is
I don't know,
here?
Fred. You know what? I kind of like looking at this young lady. It's worth hearing what she has to say just because she's cute as a button. So anyway, thank you for that, Fred. Look, having a club in your high school promoting stuff like Haitians kidnapping or dog napping and roasting your pets for dinner. Dude, I'm so glad my son is out of high school. I don't even know what to think about having TPUSA. After the violence at that Charlie Kirk's last TPUSA rally, I think it's just crazy to even bring something that's potentially violent into your kid's high school. That's crazy. And you know what? If you want to know how to debate, well, shit, there's debate clubs have existed in high schools forever. So, it's just, these folks are just short on rhetoric, and high as a kite on their own supply, apparently. And I don't mean to pick on Black Bear, but I've never been able to understand the only way to counteract a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That is literally fucking, that's literally Dodge City rhetoric. We're all Matt Dillon. So New York City's mayor, Eric Adams, finally has faced reality. The incumbent was polling behind several other candidates, including Democratic nominee and frontrunner Zohran Mamdani. Now, I wonder if he'll wind up working for the Trump administration. I'm guessing, I'll flip a coin. I don't know. I think Trump would be crazy to wait. I thought I'd heard that he could be like ambassador to some Caribbean country. Like Herschel Walker's like the ambassador to the Bahamas or some bullshit like that. So it's going to be interesting. There was talk that Eric Adams might go work in the Trump administration. They were trying to get or consolidate support behind Andrew, not Andrew Cuomo. Shit, I can't even remember Cuomo's first name now. I am getting old. So anyway, Eric Adams is out. And this next story, as Mamdani rises, South Asians emerge as a political force in New York. Quite frankly, I'm kind of happy to see this. We probably need more Asian input into American politics. So Zohran Mamdani's upstart campaign for mayor of New York City is inspiring the growth of the South Asian community to be more active in politics. And I can tell you who is busting a gasket over South Asians getting into politics. That would be Amy Wax, who has a huge problem with South Asians being fairly tending to be Democrat voters. So hats off to Amy Wax. And again, by the way, most of these articles that I go through during the show are actually in the show notes. And if anybody ever wants me to drop an article into the chat, so you can follow up personally, feel free to ask me to do it. What's up, Ryan? And make sure that you hit the like button. And if you are new in the to the show, please make sure you subscribe. And if you like the show, recommend it out. We are in a quest for 500 subscribers. So at least monetization is an option. And when we get close to monetization, I'll probably wrangle up all the wrench holders and talk about it, because I have some trepidation about the monetization process. In some ways, in my opinion, it's kind of like a velvet handcuff. So, but anyway, we're not even close. Some of these wrench holders. Yeah. Well, hey, I see you. You must know him from other chats. I know I've seen him in CT's chat. So, Dirty Dude, I don't know. I didn't know him that well. I was kind of looking forward to a little back and forth with him, but I'll abide by your decision. So, Ryan, let's see. It's actually called Common Sense If Bad Guys Are Strapped. Now, I call it cowboy. I call it cowboy mentality. America was never Dodge City per se. What you call common sense, Ryan, I call sheer cowboy logic. So you and I would never agree on this good guy with a gun bullshit. It hasn't worked. It sounds great, sounds tough, like Charlton Heston, from my cold dead hands. That's pretty much what's going to happen to good guys with guns. You're going to be prying guns from their cold dead hands. I was watching something yesterday. It was something on YouTube, and it was concerning. No, you know what? It was actually a TV show where one of the characters in the show goes, he's a black guy, and saying talking about guns and gun control in this good guy, bad guy thing. There's certain places where that good guy, bad guy logic just doesn't work. And I think it's childish, if not just flat out, it's some white boy, some 14-year-old white boy watching too much gun smoke and thinking he can outdraw. He's the fastest gun in the West. That's what good guy with a gun sounds like. So our lovely and sweet white angel, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Greene straying from Trump reflects on emerging MAGA split. The right-wing Republican Congresswoman from Georgia, she's next district up from where I live, by the way, has grown disillusioned with her own party and with President Trump, and increasingly willing to say so. Now, I have to listen to a little bit of this. Sorry, but I got to listen.
Greene, straying from Trump, reflects an emerging MAGA split. This article is by Annie Carney and read by an automated voice. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the right-wing Republican from Georgia, did not appreciate being threatened by the White House over her backing for a bill ordering the release of the Epstein files. So after a Trump official put out word that doing so would be viewed as a very hostile act, she called a top West Wing aide to push back. "I told them, you didn't get me elected. I do not work for you. I work for my district," she recounted recently during a wide-ranging interview in her office on Capitol Hill. "We aren't supposed to just be whipped on our votes because they're telling us what to do with this scary threat, or saying we'll primary you, or that we won't get invited to the White House events. Me personally, I don't care," Ms. Greene went on. These days, when she encounters tactics like that from Mr. Trump's team, she added, "I'm like expletive you." After arriving in Congress in 2021 as something of a joke and a pariah in her own party, known for making bigoted remarks and amplifying QAnon conspiracy theories, Ms. Greene evolved into a team player. She still sometimes spouted groundless claims and racist remarks, but also wielded some measure of influence by aligning herself closely with former Representative Kevin McCarthy, then Speaker of the House, who in turn reined in her more extreme impulses. But those days are all now behind her. Ms. Greene is no longer a team player for Republicans in Congress, and she is no longer seen as a joke. She is now operating as a powerful free agent with considerable self-regard and a big chip on her shoulder. She appears to feel no obligation to anyone in Washington, certainly not to Speaker Mike Johnson, whom she tried to oust last year for allowing a vote on continued U.S. aid to Ukraine, and increasingly not even to Mr. Trump. On a variety of topics, including the release of documents related to the case against the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, the war in Gaza, artificial intelligence, and America's involvement in Iran and Ukraine, Ms. Greene has broken sharply with the man she still calls my favorite president. But Mr. Trump in recent months has tested the limits of the unflagging loyalty that his base has previously shown him, and Ms. Greene's stalwart positions have revealed a fraying at the edges of the MAGA movement. From where the base is, she's right on every issue, and pushing things, going where the puck is going, said Stephen K. Bannon, the former Trump advisor and host of the War Room podcast. Many Republicans in Congress still act giddy when Mr. Trump calls them by their first names, and dutifully fall in line with his every pronouncement. But Ms. Greene, long one of Mr. Trump's most loyal allies, no longer appears to have stars in her eyes about the president. "It changes when someone goes into office," Ms. Greene said, choosing her words carefully to avoid criticizing the president directly. any president. They're in a cone of information that they're being provided. That's a serious factor happening. She added, if I can move President Trump out of there, I think he's on the right page. I think it's a matter of who is talking in his ear. But recently, Ms. Green has been willing to point out when Mr. Trump has strayed from the MAGA messages and positions that got him and her elected, leading to high-profile breaks with a president to whom she has displayed loyalty that has not always been returned. I didn't get elected with a President Trump endorsement, she said, noting that she had won her 2020 primary on my own. Mr. Trump eventually endorsed her in the general election, but by that time, Ms. Green was already coasting to victory. It felt really bad at the time, but honestly, it's been the best thing for me, she said. I get to be very independent. On a recent Thursday morning in her Capitol Hill office, where a giant portrait of Ms. Green hangs over the receptionist's desk, her boyfriend, Brian Glenn, the Real America's Voice correspondent known for asking President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine why he was not wearing a suit in the Oval Office, was visiting her at work, as he often does. Ms. Green, her white blonde hair pulled back in a tight high ponytail, was rushing back from House votes and finishing up a call with Sergio Gore, who runs the Presidential Personnel Office. She settled in to chat about her evolution in Congress under a wall of framed photographs of the most important people in her life, her children, herself, and Mr. Trump. I have sincerely tried to do my job in different ways, she said. I tried everything from fighting leadership to working with the speaker. I think over time I've earned respect, maybe because I haven't changed, and they're finding out she has real convictions. Mr. Glenn, who has close relationships with top officials in the White House, said there is no moving her on the issues she cares about. It doesn't matter what I say. She's very strong in her beliefs, Mr. Glenn said, describing Ms. Green as a modern-day feminist. Ms. Green's stance on the Epstein files. She is one of just 3 Republicans who have signed on to the petition to force a floor vote on the issue, and other issues like the war in Gaza have earned her strange new respect from Democrats who have been somewhat horrified to find themselves agreeing with Ms. Green on, well, anything. Marjorie Taylor Greene is winning my respect, Zaid Jilani, a progressive writer who has worked for left-leaning political action committees and think tanks, wrote in a recent opinion essay for The Washington Post. Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, who is helping to lead the charge to release the Epstein files, said that, despite strong differences, she is willing to work on areas where there may be common ground. In July, Ms. Green became the first Republican in Congress to describe the situation in Gaza as a genocide, breaking sharply with her party. You can't unsee dead children, she said in the interview, describing what made her do so. That's not fake. It's
I'll stop this right here to deal with this interesting comment. So, Ryan, free buses, less cops, tax increases, it's California 2.0, and they are done, 50 billion deficit. Why do you give a fuck, Ryan? You don't live in New York City. Why are the voters in New York City not free to choose their own candidate? Okay, butt out would be my advice. And you know what? Free buses, so what? Especially the buses. It's public transport supported with public money. Okay, as to the other stuff, I find it odd that people who don't live in New York City have an opinion on Mamdani. Other than, hey, I don't agree with the voters, but if the voters put him in office, and it seems somewhat likely they will, if you live in Baltimore, butt out. And Brian Nichols, I can't remember, do you live in New York City? If you do, I am willing to hear you out. At least you will be voting there. And so you have a say one way or the other. Even Donald Trump, I kind of give him a little grace with this Mamdani thing because he was born and raised there and has properties there. And who knows, he may still consider himself a resident. So anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know what? What I'm hearing is that she just wants a purer form of MAGA. She hasn't really changed her mind. So the man behind Trump's push for an all-powerful presidency. I have talked several times about unitary executive theory, and Russell Vought apparently is he's like the main driver behind it. I'm going to switch over to this video right quick. Let's see what Coral has to say. Coral Davenport.
Remade with a vision to control the government's spending. And the main person who's making that happen is Russell Vought. Russell Vought has been with the Trump administration from the very beginning. He also worked on Project 2025, which was sort of the conservative blueprint. And now he is the director of the White House Office of Management and Budget. I've talked to upwards of 30 people who work with him, are close with him. I have listened to several hours of speeches, podcasts.
The president has to move executively as fast and as aggressively as possible with a radical constitutional perspective to be able to dismantle that bureaucracy and their power centers.
The real test of his expansion of presidential power comes with the power of the purse. Congress has the power of the purse. They say the money is supposed to go out to these agencies and these programs, and then the White House makes sure that money is dispersed. And that's how it's worked for 200 years. Under Vought, the White House this year has frozen or delayed billions of dollars in spending, according to an estimate by congressional Democrats. This is what Vought calls woke, weaponized, and wasteful spending. In many cases, the frozen funds have been challenged both in the courts and also by members of Congress.
We will not be intimidated by Russ Vought, who's completely and totally out of control,
including Republicans. And in some cases, Vought has then.
By the way, the Supreme Court conservative majority, and I think John Roberts, if I recall, John Roberts in particular, they are proponents of unitary executive privilege or unitary executive theory, which blows my mind because the Constitution literally doesn't call for a unitary executive. They want to take a sentence or two and kind of give meaning to it, take away from the plain meaning. So all these people who claim to be originalists and textualists, when it comes to having a unitary executive, they veer away. That's why this Congress, I'm going to tell you where the actual turning point, Dirty, you and I kind of agree that we're already there as far as an authoritarian government goes. The actual watershed moment will be how the Supreme Court decides on birthright citizenship. And I'm going to be stark about it. If they rule for Trump with the birthright citizenship thing, America ceases to be America. It will be anti-constitution, like 100%. They should never call themselves textualists or originalists. Well, in this case, textualists, if they decide for Donald Trump in the birthright citizenship case. And I think it's coming in November. And I'm going to do my level best to actually listen to it in real time on this show. If they decide against Trump, America is no longer, the America of our founding fathers. So, hate to be so stark, but it's my opinion.
And been forced to release the money. Congress is just about at the end of the fiscal year, and there's still a lot of this money that's frozen. What Vought has done is he sent a letter to Congress and he identified about $5 billion of foreign aid funding that's still been frozen. He says to Congress, this money will not be available. If Congress doesn't like this, they could call for a vote to block it, but Congress has not taken any action. This is part of a broader plan for Vogt to achieve his vision. My reporting shows that he wants the Government Accountability Office, the congressional watchdog, which has already said that this is illegal, to challenge these frozen funds, to bring it eventually to the Supreme Court. He is confident that eventually the Supreme Court will find in favor of the White House. If that were to happen, then Congress's power of the purse would be profoundly weakened. It would be up to the president to control which funds are spent and which aren't. And that would allow him to choose which agencies, which programs, which policies live or die. The presidency is being...
Yeah, well, I wish I could be the next Democratic president. Boy, would I be pissing some people off. So let's listen to a little bit of this article. I'm pretty sure that she pretty much encapsulated it in the video, but we'll listen to a couple minutes and see what's going on. We're not going to listen to the whole thing.
The man behind Trump's push for an all-powerful presidency. This article is by Coral Davenport and read by an automated voice. Russell T. Vought, the White House budget director, was preparing the Trump administration's 2026 budget proposal this spring when his staff got some surprising news. Elon Musk's cost-cutting team was unilaterally axing items that Mr. Vought had intended to keep. Mr. Vought, a numbers wonk who rarely raises his voice, could barely contain his frustration, telling colleagues that he felt sidelined and undermined by the haphazard chaos of the Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, according to 6 people with knowledge of his comments, who, like others interviewed for this article, spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. "We're going to let Doge break things, and we'll pick up the pieces later," Mr. Vought told his staff during one flash of irritation. According to 3 of those people, Mr. Vaught's spokeswoman, Rachel Colley, denied that he made those comments and that he felt frustrated by Mr. Musk. This had not been Mr. Vaught's plan. Mr. Vought, who also directed the White House Office of Management and Budget in President Trump's first term, had spent 4 years in exile from power. He worked through Joseph R. Biden Jr.'s presidency from an old row house near the Capitol, where he complained of pigeons infesting his ceiling and coordinated with other Trump loyalists to draw up sweeping, detailed plans for a comeback. He had carefully analyzed mistakes from the first term, and he had laid out steps to achieve the long-sought conservative goal of a president with dramatically expanded authority over the executive branch, including the power to cut off spending, fire employees, control independent agencies, and deregulate the economy. Mr. Musk, who spent more than $250 million to help elect Mr. Trump, had celebrity, access to the president, and political capital that the budget director could never hope for. But Mr. Vought, pronounced Vogt, had something Mr. Musk did not. He had done his homework. In the months since Mr. Musk fell out with the president, Mr. Vought has at last begun to put his plans into action, remaking the presidency block by block, by restoring powers weakened after the Nixon administration. His efforts are helping Mr. Trump exert authority more aggressively than any modern president, and are threatening an erosion of the long-standing checks and balances in America's constitutional system. Now, as the government heads toward a shutdown when federal funding lapses on Tuesday, Mr. Vought, 49, is leveraging the moment to further advance his goals of slashing agencies and purging employees, with his office telling agencies to prepare for mass firings unless Congress can strike a deal to keep the government open. The ultimatum follows a string of achievements for Mr. Vought. This summer, he pressured lawmakers to enact his plan to cancel $9 billion for foreign aid and public broadcasting that they had previously approved, an unusual blow by Congress to the White House. The new law claimed another prize for conservatives, the death of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And a deal Mr. Vought cut with House Republicans helped secure passage of Mr. Trump's domestic policy law that slashed spending on Medicaid and food stamps. He has spearheaded a push to erase hundreds of regulations on the environment, health, transportation, and food and worker safety, telling Mr. Trump at an August cabinet meeting that his efforts had led to 245 deregulatory initiatives this year. He has asserted White House power over independent agencies like the Federal Reserve, championing an executive order that forced them to submit their regulatory actions to his office for approval. As the acting head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency charged with enforcing rules to protect people from predatory financial practices, he halted nearly all of the agency's work and sought to fire 90% of its staff. At the heart of Mr. Vought's plan, associates say, is the intentional engineering of a legal battle over Congress's power to decide how government money is spent, potentially creating a new legal precedent for the president to block spending on any programs and policies he dislikes. The next step in the fight is a legally untested maneuver in which the Trump administration would cancel another $4.9 billion in foreign aid spending, this time without congressional approval. The gambit, known as a pocket rescission, involves the White House eliminating the spending unless Congress votes to stop.
Oh, by the way, the Supreme Court upheld on the shadow docket, basically allowed Trump to do this pocket rescission. If I think of it, I'll go back because it was a one-page decision. I'll see can I find it because I'm kind of curious. If it's interesting, I'll present it. By the way, let me say this. After this article, I've got 4 videos I'm going to show, and then I'm going to wrap up the show. My plans, and who knows, they may change, but the CKJ3, also known as the Admiral, asked me an interesting question about Clarence Thomas over the weekend. And it just so happens that I've, months ago, maybe even a couple years ago by now, I've read Corey Robbins' biography of Clarence Thomas. I happen to have it on Kindle, as a matter of fact. And for those of you who asked, someone asked on John Galt's show, well, hey, you know what? Stanley has a messy room. Where are all the books? Well, I actually do have books, but these days I only buy books that I can't get on Kindle. And a lot of times those are like old out of print books, and I have to, there's some used bookstores online that you can get books fairly cheap from. I do Kindle these days. If it's a new book or something like that, I don't even buy it if it's not on Kindle. And most new books these days are actually on Kindle. You can put like 1,000 books or more, who knows what the number is, you can actually keep in the cloud or on your Kindle locally, because you don't have to, I tend to keep the books that I'm actively reading actually physically on the Kindle. Everything else is just up in the cloud somewhere. So why have, a bunch of books? Because I used to have, like in college, just when I was in college, I literally had 500 books. And, I was crazy enough to lug all those damn things up to a dorm room once or twice. Yeah. And then, I had them in the Navy and all that stuff. And I put them in storage. They were in storage for years. And finally, rather than empty out the storage and transport them, to where I was living at the time, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I gave all my books to the Navy, because ships tend to have libraries on board. So, donating the books to the library or to ships' libraries, or I think even bases have libraries. Why lug them? Most of the books that, I actually, wanted to reread or whatever, I could get them on Kindle. Just like a lot of actual vinyl albums that I still own, I usually have copies of them on CD or these days, digitally. So, time marches on, and Kindle is where I read my books. Plus, I don't need a reading lamp at night. My wife used to get really annoyed when I read at night. So the Kindle solved that problem. So, anyway, the afternoon show or the evening show, I'm pretty much going to do Clarence Thomas. I've got, some highlights from Corey Robbins' biography. There is a long movie on Clarence Thomas's life that YouTube has. I'll probably show that, and then one or two other bits and pieces. So, and it'll be dedicated to CKJ3. And I rarely do dedicated shows like that. And I want to move towards maybe doing kind of like a morning show that's more news oriented, and then use an afternoon show for either fuckery or a specific topic. That way I can solve the John Galt criticism that Stanley never does original content. So, I'm trying to make the show better, and, we'll get there. And with people like CKJ3 and Fred and Uncle Fatty, I get a lot of constructive criticism, and I try and act on them, especially if I agree with them. So, the show's going to be a work in progress, and probably always will be, for that matter. But I appreciate, the inputs. My email address is scrolling at the bottom. Feel free to send me show ideas. Lupin does it. CKJ3 does it. I'm always open to it. So, let's see. Where do we go? Should we finish up? I think we pretty much understand what the unitary executive theory is, and it is a theory. There are lots of people, lots of legal scholars, even on the right, that kind of disagree with it. So, what I want to do is start with Heather Cox Richardson, my favorite female historian. And she says the tide turned this week, and I've not listened to it. I want to find out. And to a certain extent, I agree. I think the Kimmel issue could actually be, kind of like a pivot point. People are kind of tired of this, all these free speech absolutists going free speech for me, but not for thee. Ooh, this computer's slow.
It has been quite a week, has it not? If you think back the last 7 days or maybe the last 10 days. And somebody asked what I thought
that's
about
funny,
Robert
Uncle
Reich's
Fatty.
piece today, in which he said that the sleeping giant has awakened. And I'm going to agree. Now, you should be aware that I've been thinking this is coming now for literally years. So maybe take what I say with maybe a whole shaker of salt. But it feels to me like things are different now than they were 10 days ago. And that the American people are really paying attention now to what Trump and his loyalists are doing, and they are no longer giving those things the benefit of the doubt, which, people usually do at the beginning of an administration. They tend to say, oh, well, it's going to be good. It's going to be good change. And look at all that person promised, and we're going to get all that stuff. And in fact, we know from the polls, which are lower by the day, that the people who voted for Trump, expecting him, for example, to make the economy better and lower inflation, are dealing with the fact that the opposite has happened, that in fact, unemployment is higher and inflation is rising. And, there are fewer job openings, and a lot of the things that he promised have not only not come to pass, we've seen the opposite. So they're looking at that. They're also looking at the fact, and I think this one's really interesting, that a lot of people thought that Trump was simply going to get rid of the criminal undocumented immigrants amongst us. And as I've said, we had the mechanisms to do that anyway. One of the issues that, we had the mechanism to do that anyway, but when he kept talking about getting rid of the, the worst of the worst and so on and so forth, what a lot of people didn't realize, and I remember having this argument with a MAGA voter back in last December, that the people in his orbit maintain that the very act of crossing the border without documentation makes you a criminal who is the worst of the worst. And a lot of people didn't expect to see grandmothers who'd been here for 30 years and all the people who have become part of the fabric of the United States be deported or even be rendered to third countries. And they're not happy with seeing that. And they're not happy with seeing the masked ICE agents on the streets. And they're not happy with the use of American troops in cities as well. So he's underwater on that. And he's underwater on all the other issues that he said he would do. And if you remember back during the campaign, I kept saying he's promising everything to everyone, even when the things he's promising are mutually incompatible. And you can't be wet and dry at the same time. So lots of people are going to get unhappy. And that's what you're seeing now. And we're coming now into the fall, into a period when you're going to see a lot of the policies that the administration has put in place starting really to have teeth, starting really to take effect, not least, and I'll talk more about this in the future, in a little bit, the rise in the cost of health premiums for people who are buying healthcare insurance on the Affordable Care Act markets are facing extraordinary jumps in their premiums because of the one big beautiful act, which is what they are calling the Budget Reconciliation Bill Act that the Republicans passed in July. It got rid of the tax credits or the credits for purchasing health insurance for people who made between 100 and 400% of the federal poverty level. And that means that their premiums have gone up significantly, but that also means that healthier people have chosen not to enter the healthcare market. And that has meant that premiums for the people who are in it have also leaped up. And that's going to come back before the end of this to haunt us in this moment. So there is this the sense of dropping popularity for Trump. But what happened in the last 10 days seems to me to feel different. And I think to Robert Reich as well. And that is on the heels of the murder of Charlie Kirk, the right-wing activist in Utah, about 10 days ago now. I think I've a little bit lost track of time. What you saw was the attempt of loyalists around the president to weaponize that murder to go after people they consider their political opponents before anybody had any idea even who the murderer was. And again, that person is now in custody, but still is alleged because there has not been a trial and we haven't seen evidence and so on. But even before that, there was this concerted effort to tar everybody who did not agree with Trump and MAGA as a terrorist, or as they or them or the Democrats or the left was responsible for this murder. That, I think, made people extremely uncomfortable, as it was very clear it was part of an attempt to stop criticism of the administration. And you saw that finally with the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, saying on a podcast of a right-wing podcaster who before the election was one of those who was being funded by Russia, Carr saying that ABC News better think about continuing to have comedian Jimmy Kimmel on air because it needed a broadcast license, and there were other ways in which the FCC could come down on that person or on that company because they were permitting the spread of. They couched it as an attack on the circumstances around Charlie Kirk's murder. But in fact, if you watch Jimmy Kimmel, which I had not until after this, you see that basically his monologues are a litany of attacks on Trump. And that, if you don't know Kimmel, it seems pretty clear that's what was really going on. And that really came home to a lot of people for whom I think the Constitution and the rights that we enjoy in the United States seemed somewhat abstract, that they couldn't think they could lose them. And all of a sudden, a number of people, including Ted Cruz, who is a senator from Texas, but who seems to spend most of his time now with it running his podcast, including Tucker Carlson, a right-wing media personality, a lot of people who use their platforms in ways that can certainly be offensive, sort of said, wait a minute here, we've really got to protect the Constitution. And the outcry among the American people with the sudden recognition that they too could be on the wrong side of a government that was willing to do that made such pressure on Disney, which owns ABC, which is the employer of, or the group that runs Jimmy Kimmel Live, reversed course yesterday, and Jimmy Kimmel will be back on the air tonight. Jimmy Kimmel Live will be back on the air tonight, and people have said, will he have been cowed? And in that case, hasn't everybody lost? Now, listen, I am not somebody who knows that much at all about that TV world. But if you look at what Stephen Colbert did after his show was not renewed, he has certainly, I think, not pulled any punches at all. I mean, I think he's more outspoken than he was before. And I would be shocked if Kimmel doesn't do the same thing, because in a sense, he has been inoculated. But I don't know anything really about him or his habits. So somebody who else knows him might be able to fill people in more than that. But the point is that with that out there, a number of things became pretty apparent last week, I think, about the administration that maybe people weren't paying attention to. So on the heels of that whole brouhaha, you had what appeared to be a direct message from Trump to Attorney General Pam Bondi, in which he expressed fury that the interim nominee, the interim person who was the U.S. attorney for the district that was looking at whether or not New York Attorney General Letitia James had committed mortgage fraud, which seemed pretty clearly to be a trumped up charge, that hadn't really happened. And this is an attempt of the administration to use the law to go after her. And it's also expressed fury that same person had decided not to pursue a case against James Comey, the former FBI director, who had refused to drop the case looking into whether members of Trump's 2016 campaign had been working alongside Russian operatives, or the connections between the two. Both of them were, the administration had pushed investigations of them based on what really seemed to be trumped up charges. And this interim U.S. attorney, Eric Siebert, who was very well regarded both by Republicans and by Democrats, said, I'm not going to prosecute this. I don't have evidence for that. And Trump wrote what appeared to be a direct message that he then, of course, posted for everyone to see to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and said, this is ridiculous. You've got to go after these guys. We know they've committed crimes. I can just tell they've committed crimes, and we have to go after them. And then he reiterated that to reporters in the Oval Office. And of course, that weaponization of the political system is one that has been pretty obvious to those paying close attention for a while. But I think seeing it in black and white like that from the president really opened up the eyes of a lot of people to recognize that anybody could be next. Crossing the president made it clear that they could find someone, as was quoted on social media. That's something that one of the members of communist secret police forces have said, find the man and I'll show you the crime. I'll find something on anybody. And of course, that would be wildly impeachable for any other presidency. There was also the fact that Tom Homan, who is now Trump's border czar, his actual title is that he's an advisor to the president, is apparently, allegedly, on video. The FBI caught him on video in 2024 accepting a bag of $50,000 with $50,000 in it in exchange for promising the FBI agents who were posing as business people that he would make sure they got contracts in border security in a new Trump administration. And the response in the administration to that was, first, well, he didn't commit a crime, even though that is a crime, and it certainly appears to be a crime. And secondly, he then said, well, the White House said he didn't ever take the money. And then Homan went out in public and said, well, what I did wasn't a crime. Well, again, this is a group of people who spent 4 years trying to pin on Joe Biden the idea that he had somehow accepted a bribe or that his son had accepted a bribe. And now they're saying, oh, never mind, I don't care. So there were all of those areas. And then there were a couple of others as well. The other one that jumps out.
Look, the other thing, besides the TPUSA issue, which I agree with Dirty Dude, probably needs to be emphasized every show this week. But Trump is literally corrupt. Okay, he and his family see this presidency as a way to enrich their family. And hey, this unitary executive, it's like a little bit of a kingship. Hey, I'm the president. Not only do I get to do what I want to do, and you've heard him say things to that effect. I'm the president, I have the right to do so. Apparently he has the right to profit, by, deals his family's done with the Saudis. Apparently, hey, if you are in the Trump gang, Tom Homan just shutting down an investigation. I find that just simply corrupt. And for all the people who, ever since I was a kid, for the past 50 years going, hey, you know what? This country needs to be run by a businessman. Well, you finally got a businessman running this country like it's his own personal business. You've got Ryder Cups at Trump facilities. You've got Saudi sponsored golf tournaments at Trump facilities. You've got the next G20 summit down in Miami at a Trump resort. Dude is racking up. His family will be pretty much the next Kennedy family. I guess that's what he's aiming for. And it is truly disgusting. And what should nominally be a populist movement is literally getting the billionaire class tax cuts and Trump personal wealth. Okay, there'll be no doubt that he's a billionaire now. There used to be like, oh, he's a paper billionaire. He just says he's a billionaire, but now we know he's a billionaire. And these mom and pop, the plumbers, the carpenters, the work a day, Joe Plumbers, y'all literally carried a litter with Trump and his family on it all the way to the White House. And now he fucking wants to build a ballroom. You can guarantee you American man will not be on the guest list to the Trump ballroom. It's fucking amazing. And then these fools are still on the Trump train. Dude, it is hilarious. Talk about voting against your own self-interest. It's amazing.
Out are the extraordinary attacks on the American public health system by Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And that has been shown through changes to the vaccination schedule. And if you recall, he promised Senator Bill Cassidy from
Hey, dirty
Louisiana,
dude.
who is
That Trump Kool-Aid has a roofie in it. Trump put a roofie in his Kool-Aid. So these Trump voters aren't going to wake up.
himself a doctor, Robert Kennedy is not, that he wouldn't make changes to the vaccine systems in the US. And of course, as soon as he was confirmed, Kennedy went ahead and did that. He fired a whole bunch of people who are on the advisory committee for vaccines, and then they have begun the process of changing the vaccine schedules. And doctors and public health people recognize that this is a ticking time bomb. And similarly, the cuts to funding for cancer, for example, and the many ways in which the administration is attacking the public health system are really deeply problematic. And there is also, of course, what happened yesterday when Trump said he would have the FDA announce to physicians that for pregnant women to take acetaminophen during their pregnancies creates a very high risk of autism in their babies. There's just no evidence for that. There's been no change in the evidence we have. This is part of the crusade that Kennedy has been on. But again, doctors and public health people recognize that this is wildly dangerous for our public health system and for the American people. So all of those things happened at once. But why do things feel different? So I'm going to step back a little bit here and remind you that Trump all along has, since 2016, has been doing things that for any other president would be deal breakers. And he has never had to grapple with the consequences because the Republican Party supported him. No matter what he did, the Republican Party supported him, which itself is deeply problematic, but also a really interesting moment in our political history, that people who otherwise have taken oaths to the Constitution are walking away from their power to give everything over to one guy. But now things are different. And they feel different, I think, because Trump can no longer command the votes that he could even as recently as November 2024. And what I mean by that is that the Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA people, are furious at Kennedy for making a link between autism and acetaminophen or Tylenol. They wanted to see him say there was a link between autism and vaccines. And they're very angry that he did not do that. They're also angry that he has backed away from his previous claims about autism and pesticides, which is another thing that, again, a lot of researchers were exploring, and now he has backed off on that. So even though the Kennedy is infuriating people like me who care about vaccines and public health, he's also infuriating those people who turned out for Trump because he is not delivering on their pet peeves. Similarly, one of the big things for Trump getting into office in 2024 were the people who wanted to see the release of the Epstein files. That is, the government files that were compiled during the investigation of Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender. And that, again, the Trump administration ran on, they promised, and then in July of this year, backed off and said, no, we're not going to release anything. There were no files, and that case is closed. Well, then, of course, things started to leak, in which after Elon Musk had said in June that Trump was in the Epstein files. The Wall Street Journal then confirmed that later on in July, as I recall. And now we have seen some of the material. Oh, no, we've actually seen the whole birthday book that was bound in leather for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. And we have seen really suggestive, horrific things in that book. We've also seen increasing public appearances by the victims, the survivors of Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who is in prison, but who has been moved to a work camp, a much less strict prison than the one she was in, after talking to the Department of Justice. And a lot of people are really angry that the Epstein files are not coming out. Now, on top of all that, in this moment, there are also a couple of other big things hanging out there. One is that the farming community in the United States is hurting really badly because of the tariffs that Trump imposed, most of which a federal judge has found illegal. Now, that's going to go in front of the United States Supreme Court, and if I have time, I'll tell you more about what they're up to. But that part of the country that voted for Trump and believed that he was going to be really good for them is now hurting terribly badly because of the tariffs, especially the soybean farmers who used to sell a significant part of their crop to China and have lost all of that market. China has now gone to another country for their soybeans, and they do not have a market for those soybeans. And at the same time, they're losing a lot of their undocumented help, or even documented help, who are like, we're out of here. We're not gonna, we're scared to show up because we're going to get into these ICE sweeps and we can't prove that we're here legally if our papers aren't on us. So especially now the Supreme Court has said that racial profiling is okay. So that's another major Trump voting group that I'm not saying they're ever going to vote Democratic, but they may not turn out for Trump again. And then there's also what you are seeing is in this moment is a lot of the things that went into place with the cuts that the Department of Government Efficiency made, and that the Russell Vogt at the Office of Management and Budget, one of the key writers of Project 2025, has done. A lot of those clawing back of money that Congress had appropriated for education, for example, or for public health, or for universities, the clawing back of that money has badly hurt Republican districts, because Republican districts tend to be rural. And because they tend to be rural, they tend to be significantly older, and they tend to rely more on federal money because they have less of a tax base than urban areas that have younger people in them and have more people in them and more industry in them. So a lot of red areas are furiously angry at what is happening around them, to the point that, as you know, a lot of Republican lawmakers are not holding town halls because they're afraid to go in front of their constituents and they don't want to be screamed at. All right. So somebody just asked, can I comment about the UN? That's where I was going. So all of that background is there over the last week. But before I talk about the UN, have you noticed anything about President Trump lately, or J.D. Vance, but the vice president? You know, Trump is always sitting behind the Resolute desk when he's in the Oval Office, with people standing behind him. You know, he doesn't move around very much. And when he is out, he often seems to be falling asleep. And he doesn't seem to hold many high-level meetings. I'll talk about that again in a minute. And when he talks, if you remember, the White House is no longer providing transcripts of his speeches, which is odd. I mean, that's part of the public record. They're supposed to do that, and they've just decided they're not going to do it. And they say, oh, well, you know, you can watch clips, but those clips are edited. And the reason that I'm suggesting all that is because he seems unable to fill the role of the president any longer. He is incoherent. He is boastful to the point of, I mean, he sounds like an unregulated toddler. And he doesn't seem to be able really to communicate with people anymore in meaningful ways. Instead, what he is doing is increasingly boasting about a world that is not true. He keeps talking about how his poll numbers are the best in history. They're actually among the worst in history, and they're dropping. And he keeps talking about how America has conquered inflation. Well, no, inflation's on its way back up again. You know, I mean, that's just wrong. Talks about how strong the job market is. No, it's not. Talks about how well his tariffs are and all these tariffs he has negotiated. No, he hasn't. You know, now he's talking about all these wars he has stopped, even some wars that hadn't even, nobody even knew they were going to start. That's just a fantasy. That's not true at all. At the same time, he is increasingly backing away and refusing to deal with difficult issues. That being said, he certainly seems as if he is not able to fulfill the role of the president, and he's living in this sort of fantasy bubble. All right, so this morning he went to the UN. It's called the General Debate, and it's not a debate. It's where it's actually really cool, and you can read the transcripts if you're interested, and watch the videos on the UN website if you are interested, as I was. And what happens in the General Debate, it's just what it's called. Like I say, they're not debating. Is the heads of government or of state speak to the group of people who are assembled at the UN about what their priorities and what their plans are going forward. So what happened this morning was that the Secretary General gave the speech that you would expect, saying, please remember, this is the 80th year of the UN. And the reason we have the UN is because after World War II, the world's leaders decided, the Allies decided that they were going to create a world in which they could avoid World War III because World War II had been so horrible. So they created this system to establish a set of rules that would enable us to argue out wars before they start. And I'm going to do a little bit of an aside here and point out that that's a really amazing idea. If you think about the way treaties used to work, that you had treaties that if you went to war, other countries would join you, and if you were attacked, other countries would fight with you. The idea that you can have treaties to stop wars, to make sure that those things don't happen, is really kind of amazing. And what they did with the establishment of the UN was the idea of creating a world where you didn't have to solve everything with force. So he gets up there and he says, this is important and we want to make sure this stays in place, even though a lot of people are, there's a lot of challenges to that around the world. And, he gives a speech and then somebody else speaks. Trump is fourth, as I recall. And he gets up and he speaks for an hour, and it is freaking unhinged. It is, he says he's the only one who knows how to run things, that I think he even says to the people assembled that their countries are going to hell, and he's the only one who knows how to run a country, and that they're ruining their countries because of immigration and clean energy, and that we really need to do is have borders and fossil fuels. And he's just insulting, and then he just starts going about how he solved all these wars and he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. And you can just see on their faces, they are aghast, and not, I think, aghast because they were offended. There's actually somebody who texted a reporter and said, he's barking mad. Do the American people not recognize what's going on here? And that performance at the UN was, I think, a window into America, the United States of America, more than it was a statement about the United States on the world stage, because he was totally insulting and all that. But he was also not, I mean, you could see the white nationalism that it had Stephen Miller's hand in it, and you could see um, that isolationism as well. But that was not the gist of that hour-long rambling speech at all. I mean, it was really eye-popping. So then what happened? What happened is that Trump had a meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine and basically came out and said, yeah, I'm going to back you. No, he didn't say this. He said, looks like Ukraine can win and Russia can't. And, you know, America's going to stand behind NATO and basically sort of said, I'm done. You guys, good luck. And that's a big deal. It appears that less than how many weeks ago was he saying that he was backing Russia and that Russia should take all of Ukraine? And now he turned around and said, well, actually, Ukraine can get all of its land back and probably more, because, of course, as we know, Russia's in terrible economic shape right now. So it was just off the charts weird, but also indicative that people who are interested in governance, or in power, perhaps is a better way to put it, are almost certainly already thinking about what comes next. And I just mean, who knows? J.D. Vance is the next person in line to be president. He does not have his own popular following, although he is working extremely hard to step into Charlie Kirk's shoes. He did Charlie Kirk's podcast or webcast or whatever it was, and spoke at his service and was one of the more memorable speakers there. And, you know, he's trying to pick up a younger group of people behind Christian nationalism. But in this moment, if you are a business person or a television exec or whatever, and certainly if you are a Republican lawmaker trying to figure out how best to retain your power, it is no longer clear that the best way to retain your power is to side with MAGA. It may, in fact, be that the best way to retain your power is to look at the extraordinary backlash against the firing of Jimmy Kimmel. And remember that when you do the numbers, only about 32% of American adults voted for Trump. And G. Elliott Morris, who does Strength in Numbers, explained this very well the other day, that although Trump did win the last election with under 50% of the vote, only 64% of eligible voters showed up to vote. So that translates to about 32% of American adults being Trump voters in 2024. And of course, his popularity has plummeted since then. So if you're sitting there making this calculation, you can say, well, hold on just a minute. If he had 32% and now that's dropping and everybody else is energized against him, maybe my next move is not to stay behind MAGA. Maybe my next move is to figure out where the center of power in the American electorate is. And that's where we come in. We come in by continuing to ratchet up that pressure, not, as I say, to convert the MAGA voters or the MAGA lawmakers, but to remember that there are a lot of people retiring this year, mostly Republicans, and there will be people filling their slots. And if we want them to do what we want them to, we need to make them understand what that looks like. And certainly ABC News or Disney figured out what that looks like. And the pressure that we can bring to bear for the other issues we care about, that is exactly how you translate the things you care about into law. Now, one of the places you're going to see this play out in the next few weeks is over funding the U.S. government. That the Republicans, MAGAs, or the Republicans in general have a real problem in that they have maintained that the cuts that Doge and Trump have and vote have made to the American government are good. That the United States needs to spend less money so it can have these tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations. Well, the bad news is that Americans are discovering that they don't want those things. So it is not really possible for them to square the circle that says the way you make a country great is through tax cuts and deregulation, when in fact the American people are saying, hang on just a minute here, that's not what we want. And you can see if you look to Argentina, where Javier Milei did something very similar there, that billionaire Elon Musk used as a model for the Department of Government Efficiency. That economy is in real trouble and voters are sour on it, to the point that the US under Trump is talking about propping Argentina up to try and keep that experiment going. So going forward into this budget mess, you've got the Republicans controlling all the branches of government. You've got Trump unwilling to talk to Democrats at all. And he's saying, well, it's not worth it because they're all far left, whatevers. I wonder if it's that he can't handle a meeting. He can't possibly do that. But the Republicans control everything. But in order to get a budget through the Senate, they're going to need 60 votes because of the filibuster. And so they're going to have to get Democratic buy-in to that. And right now, it looks like they're not going to get it. The Democrats are saying that we won't consider this unless you are willing to bring back those tax credits so that people can get health care insurance. And the Republicans in the House forced through a continuing resolution that did not do that. And then they went on vacation, or not a vacation. They took off until after the deadline, because they're trying to jam the Democrats. And I think the Democrats, at least right now, are saying, forget it. We're not going to do this. The Democrats in the Senate. So, again, the Republicans have this problem. They have set up the idea that nothing is better for the country than cutting taxes and cutting regulations. That's not what the American people want. The Republicans are in charge. Who knows what's going to happen here? But I think what we're seeing is sort of a breakdown of this whole idea that you could create this fantasy world of what a Trump presidency could look like. And now that rubber is meeting the road, it's all falling apart. And we're going to be left picking up the pieces. That's a bad position to be in a lot of ways, but it's also a very good position to be in, because an awful lot of stuff is going to be on the table that wasn't even 5 years ago. This would be a good time to remember your neighbors who are hurting for food in this moment, or who are frightened of ICE raids. And it would be a good time to remember to speak up and to continue to make community. I'm doing a big thing with Red Wine and Blue this week later on, to emphasize that there are, I believe, 52,000 elections going on this fall, in local elections, state elections, and that you can participate in all of those 52,000 elections that will change the direction of the country. And to remember that things, we're in this weird paradox where Trump and certainly the Supreme Court are doing authoritarian things. And yet, as they do so, opposition to that is ramping up significantly. And the people defending the Constitution and democracy are scoring a lot of wins on that front. So lots hanging in the balance today, but it just feels a little bit like the tide changed over the last week. So we'll see. But I feel like that's happened for a long time. So maybe we still got a much longer way to go. The fact Robert Reich saw it too gives me a little bit of hope.
All right.
Lived under a monarchy? How can
I want to pause this right quick. There is a point to this video. I wanted to let's look at CT's show right quick. I'm looking to catch up with Black Bear. And he doesn't look like he's in that chat either. I'll catch up with Black Bear at some point. I'm not as good at multitasking as I used to be. I seem to be losing that multitask ability with age. But he and I were talking about Black people and guns And his contention is that most black people, well, his statement was black people are anti-gun. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So then he amended it to most black people are anti-gun. Of course, he sees gun control as anti-gun, which to me doesn't even make sense. But I wanted to point out, because I took the time, and let's see if I can get this larger. Let's do this. And then let me see, can I enlarge it so it's easier to see on the screen? Oops. And this is just an oblique way of proving my point. It's not like a direct poll, but this is a Pew Research poll about Americans and various opinions on guns. And this one particular set of data is non-gun owners are divided on whether they could see themselves owning a gun in the future. So it's broken down in the second tier here between white, black, Hispanic, Asian. So this section here, which I can't highlight, so they polled Black Americans, and it's kind of divided here, but Black Americans, these are non-gun owners. 44% of Black Americans in this Pew Research poll, and I wouldn't call it definitive, but it's a good snapshot, as Pew polls tend to be. 44% of Black non-gun owners that they polled, 44% could never see myself owning a gun, whereas 56% could see themselves owning a gun in the future. So, it's kind of a simple majority. It's very divided. But even in this particular poll, the majority, and it's not a huge majority, but a majority of Black people could see themselves owning a gun in the future. And the reason I bring this up is in the white, Hispanic, and Asian categories, the non-gun owners, they polled, the majorities of whites, Hispanics, and Asians outnumber the people who could never see themselves owning a gun, outnumber the people in their racial category that could see themselves owning a gun. Blacks are the opposite. Most of the Black non-gun owners polled or surveyed could see themselves. So, it's an oblique way of looking at it, but that Black people are anti-gun, at least in this poll, doesn't hold water. And this is what anti-Black blacks do. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that Black Bear is anti-Black. That's a little unfair because I don't know him that well. But his statement about most blacks being anti-gun, just does not hold water. And, I don't know why these people are so comfortable being so definite about what they think Black people are or what they think. Dude, Blacks are as diverse a group of people as far as opinions held and that sort of thing as any other group. If anything, Blacks are more pro-gun. And again, I'm doing this oblique. I'm doing some extrapolations here. Blacks are probably more pro-gun than whites, to be honest with you. So when I run into Black Bear again, I'll send him this poll. But just my anecdotal experience living in the South most of my life, Black people are perfectly comfortable with guns, especially Blacks who live in the rural like, rural blacks, for want of a better term. Just, it doesn't hold water. So getting back to this, this is basically, this is Joanne Freeman. She is a Yale history professor. And in this particular video, they're talking about the early American Republic, specifically about Hamilton. However, this one comment about the executive and the powers of the executive, it kind of goes to my point that the unitary executive theory is literally contra the U.S. Constitution. The founding fathers, and it's in the literature, they were not for the president being the focal point or the tip of the pyramid running the U.S. government. And hopefully I got this in the right place. Let's see.
Going to be really worried about the same thing in creating a government. And in state governments, they the first stabs at state governments took powers away from the governors of states and gave more power to legislatures because they were scared of this kind of thing. A national
No more royal
executive,
governors.
no more royal governors. A national executive, scary thing, because it feels like if you're in a world where everything is monarchs and you yourself lived under a monarchy, how can you not look at that kind of figure and see a monarch? So that's what people think of it. And the reason why it becomes such a big deal is that they're trying to figure out how to hem it in. One of the things that they debate
Hem
for
it
a
in,
little
that's
while,
a good way of putting it.
they're
Control.
Yeah, well, how do you limit it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they talk about not having one person. They talk about, having a council, an executive council.
Exactly. And they wind up deciding on a single president. And I would imagine, somewhere back in classical Roman history, especially, you get rivalries, with a triumvirate or that sort of thing. Having a very powerful executive back then, they feared it. Legislatures were considered to be more democratic, but only slightly more democratic. The idea of a unitary executive is literally not what the framers of the Constitution would have wanted. So, and to your point, Dirty, the Supreme Court, Roberts in particular, and I'm sure the other conservatives, they are for a unitary executive. And Roberts has been this way for quite some time. I don't know where they're getting the idea from. And if I really wanted to be dark about it, what they're going, and again, this is my own personal conspiracy theory. It has no basis in fact, but it literally sounds like what they're going to try and do is keep Republicans in power by force if necessary. That's why, because to me, if it's a possibility that a Democrat could be president and use unitary executive theory, it would be everything, the far right doesn't want. So all I can think of is pushing this unitary executive the way they seem to be pushing it. It's some sort of power grab, and permanent, making this power grab permanent. If I were to play out, a conspiracy theory, it would be, hey, they want to give MAGA a powerful unitary executive because they don't plan on giving up the presidency anytime soon. And again, it's my personal conspiracy theory. I don't have any basis in fact, but dude, the circumstantial evidence just seems to be there. So I'm going to play this last thing, Professor Black Truth, and then I'm going to call the ball on ending the show. I, for now at least, plan on doing a show around 4 or 5 this afternoon, specifically addressing Clarence Thomas So let's go ahead and play Professor Black Truth, and then we'll see where we are afterwards. But more than likely, I'll just go ahead and call the show.
If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon, so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. Ezra Klein wrote an op-ed celebrating Charlie Kirk, but mostly Ezra did what he always does. He talked about himself and his own feelings and what he thought. The man's an egomaniac. No matter what happens, it's always about him. He used his piece in the New York Times to validate that he's the judge of whether something is legitimate political speech, and so he exalted how Charlie Kirk was, as he put it, practicing politics the right way. That Klein and Kirk were, quote, on the same side of the continued possibility of American politics, engaging with words, not bullets. But Klein conveniently neglects to ever actually mention Charlie Kirk's words. He says nothing about Kirk's constant race baiting, his open celebrating of black people murdered by white assailants, his lies about crime stats, black people's intelligence, even to things like black pilots. No black pilot has ever had a plane crash inside the U.S., something their white counterparts cannot say, and which Kirk didn't say either. Charlie Kirk was a racist and a liar, and Ezra Klein said this was practicing politics the right way. But Klein never mentions Kirk's words. None of Kirk's fans ever does. It's the only way you can talk about him and not condemn him. Claim to love what he stood for, but never tell people what he said he stood for. Imagine trying to laud a man so corrupt that you attack people for doing what you didn't do, telling people what Charlie Kirk's actual words were. To decry political violence without mentioning how Kirk celebrated it and supported it, to separate how someone practiced politics without ever praising what they were politicking for, this is the height of intellectual dishonesty. Now, while a lot of people on the white left are catching the vapors at Klein sucking up to this imaginary version of Charlie Kirk that never existed, the reality is Ezra Klein is a Zionist. He'll deny it, but it's true. And like a number of Zionists, they've been furious that leftist activists, particularly at these colleges and universities, have started to reject what these people have been telling them all these years. In other words, these young people have begun to question folks like Ezra Klein, and worse. These young people are denouncing Ezra Klein's worldview and rebelling against what the white media, like Ezra Klein's New York Times, has told them all these decades. People like Ezra Klein don't like that. And that's where his sudden bout of petulance with the failed politics of the Democrats and the left has come from. You see, for Ezra Klein, just like with the Democrats, losing elections is perfectly fine. But questioning the narratives that people like Ezra Klein and the DNC depend on for their power and influence, now that we can't have. The reality is Ezra Klein has far more in common with Barry Weiss than he does the likes of, say, Noam Chomsky. This isn't lack of awareness on his part. This is someone who's trying to stick up for a position that they know you don't support. When Ezra Klein talks about Charlie Kirk doing politics the right way, what he means is in a way that neoliberal mouthpieces like Ezra Klein approve of. This same attitude is why Democrats keep losing elections. They know what their base is demanding, they see it, and they're determined not to do it. Democrats know full well exactly what they have to do to win elections, but as far as they're concerned, producing tangibles for black voters, punishing the police for their criminality, stopping the American oligarchy from stealing the whole country, well, if Democrats did any of those things, that would be winning elections the wrong way. That's the reason why you didn't see Kamala Harris talking about any of those things, while the people on the campaign trail were screaming at her, you have to do these things. Ezra Klein and the DNC have that in common. His argument isn't with the Democratic leadership. It's with the activists and the non-political actors who are giving so much pushback. Ezra's defense of Kirk is pure moral relativism. And when you hear people like me point out that the similarities between the white left and the white right far outweigh any alleged differences, this is what we're talking about. This kind of finger-wagging lecturing that we should only consider Charlie Kirk and the cheap, vile bigotry he stood for in the abstract without ever passing judgment on what he said, that's not principle. That's actually advocacy, because we never hear this from Klein or any of these other white liberals at any other time. Some of your white online podcasters and pundits have made the same statements about black politics in the past, so Klein's not alone. The only reason so many of your white online podcasters and pundits are getting their noses bent out of joint now is because Kirk took shots at things they care about, like abortion and transgender issues. That's why these white leftists constantly don't mention what he said about black people. It's because they don't care. That's the issue they've got with Ezra Klein's piece. He mentioned in passing how Paul Pelosi was attacked by a Trump supporter with a hammer, but conveniently neglected to mention that he was a Trump supporter, or how Charlie Kirk went on his podcast and laughed and celebrated that violent assault, and told his listeners that they should bail the attacker out of jail and treat him to an interview.
And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like 30 or 40,000 bucks. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions.
This is what Ezra Klein called practicing politics the right way. Klein said he wanted a safer America for Pelosi's sake, but never mentioned how Charlie Kirk openly celebrated what happened to Paul Pelosi, not to mention while Ezra Klein was busy casting empathy in all directions to Democrats and Republicans alike, Charlie Kirk said empathy was a social disease not worth catching. But there was one thing Ezra Klein said that was factually true.
But I find myself grieving for him because I recognize some commonality with him.
Yeah, he saw a commonality between himself and Charlie Kirk. I'll bet he did. A white man with media access, tons of big white money behind him, racial privilege, working for rich white interests, and trying to forward their agenda. And I'm sure that at this point, some of you are going to ask, well, Professor, what did you think about Ta-Nehisi Coates' Vanity Fair piece that was criticizing Ezra Klein? First of all, he didn't criticize anything. That's the first thing that needs to be said. He did not take Ezra Klein or any of these other white leftists to task for what they said about Charlie Kirk eulogizing an unrepentant bigot. All it was the usual Ta-Nehisi Coates lukewarm, mealy-mouthed, all but useless gibberish. And if you are one of the delusional people who thought that Ta-Nehisi Coates apparently had some sort of beef with Ezra Klein, well, I hate to lay these negative vibes on you, but just a few hours ago, Ezra Klein himself posted a video of him and Ta-Nehisi Coates having a nice little sit-down love fest and hashing out their differences. But whenever you watch this video, you see that there really weren't much differences between them at all. These were distinctions without a difference, the same old gibberish that we get from the white media and their approved of Negro bootlicks. No matter how tough these suck-ups try to talk, you put a white person in front of them and they'll show you exactly what they really think. They roll right over. So that's what I think about Ta-Nehisi Coates and the piece that he wrote that some people have misconstrued as being critical of Ezra Klein. It was not. Some of you folks out there started getting all dewy-eyed and your hearts went pitter-pat because the white media was claiming that Ta-Nehisi Coates went over to Palestine and he said some critical stuff. He didn't say critical anything. If Ta-Nehisi Coates was truly taking on the white powers that be, then the white media would never give him platforms to do so. They would be locking him out, they'd be ignoring him, and deciding, let's go ahead and can this guy at some point. It's precisely the fact that you see them welcoming his approved of, quote-unquote, criticism on their airwaves and such. That's how you know this is controlled opposition. And while it's nice that Ta-Nehisi Coates is making some grumblings of phony discontent, the truth is that people like Coates have empowered and enabled the Ezra Kleins of this world and are still doing it. The black media has known this all along. We've been saying it from the jump for 2 decades, but it's only been in the last 2 weeks that so many of these leftist Negroes have figured it out. They seem to have finally figured out the fact that many, if not most of these white have been racist as much as the day is long, and that the only actual difference between the white left and the white right is that the white right is open, upfront, and straightforward with their anti-black racism, while the white left tries to be a little less straightforward with theirs. We've been out here saying it for going on 2 decades now. And these sorry Negro mouthpieces who have been cheerleading for these very same white liberals and telling us we need to wait, be patient, oh, it's not like that. These guys got egg on their faces. No one should ever have been listening to them to begin with. Where have these people been at? They've been auditioning for a job from a white political party or white media outlet. That's where they've been. And all that talk about allies and whatnot was just them playing the game. But as we've told you, in the end, they're the ones who wind up getting played. Ezra Klein is not a phony white liberal. He's actually a genuine bona fide white liberal. This is why the whole white allies thing was always damned to fail. It's something the black grassroots has always rejected. Because no matter what era you point to, be it the so-called white abolitionists in the 19th century, the New Deal reformers like FDR in the 1930s, the white allies of the 1960s, the Kennedys, or the people you see running around today, there's always been an understanding among the white liberals that what they really wanted was to attach themselves to our freedom struggle and use us as a springboard to elevate themselves. And then when black people finally get fed up with the runaround, these same people tell us we need to wait, be patient, you're going to lose us elections. You need to practice politics the right way. And more often than not, that's exactly what they've done. And then they work behind the scenes to undermine us. And here you got silly Negroes thinking they have friends. All this time, you had these silly Negroes telling themselves that they had friends. They were confused, but these white liberals they were sucking up to, they weren't confused at all. They understood full well the game they were playing. So while people can be disgusted at Ezra Klein's words, the truth is he's saying what these white liberals have always thought. Just that up until now, they felt that they had to keep that kind of blunt honesty behind closed doors. But the rise of the alt-right and the MAGA movement has emboldened the white liberals to say what they've always thought. When you hear some person in Hollywood who claim to be liberal but attacks wokeness and political correctness, what do you think they're doing that for? It's always as a euphemism for black people. Anything that black people are advocating for, that's woke, that's political correctness, that's bad politics. Because you never hear them talk that way on any other issue at any other time. Certainly not where white activists are concerned. You have the white right losing school board elections. You got them losing mayor's offices, the usual push and pull of the political cycle. And yet you never hear the Ezra Kleins and others saying, you know what? The white right needs to modernize their talking points. They need to change. They're out of step with the country. No. They certainly never criticized the Republican leadership for always telling their people to double down and not to back down. No matter how many elections they lose, the white right always says, well, the problem is we didn't run hardcore white right enough. No, the Ezra Kleins only have criticism whenever it's people who are on the quote unquote left who are advocating for things he doesn't approve of. Then there's problems. There's a reason so many in the white media, in these schools and universities and in government or political circles couldn't wait to attack black people for demanding the police be punished for their criminality. That was where Barack Obama started attacking woke. He was the very first politician to come out and attack woke, and he did it specifically on the issue of defunding the police, fighting police brutality. That's what everybody understood to be a euphemism for woke. You're advocating and allying with what these black people are saying. You got to stop. These white liberals, they couldn't wait to attack reparations. As Bernie Sanders said, it's not feasible, not feasible. And as we see states like Florida and Texas and Oklahoma and others who are blatantly violating the law, instituting white supremacist indoctrinations in the schools and other performative extremism, how come we never see these white liberals up in arms about that? Because they've never been up in arms about these things in the past. The white liberal has always carried water for every anti-black program and policy that's ever come down the pike. The white liberal has always found a way or invented a way to make excuses for every anti-black policy. They've always been the first to be apologists for anti-black racism and to excuse it away with some pathetic deflection. They want to be the first to wag their fingers at us and tell us that when someone says some anti-black racist thing, well, we can't really call them racist because you can't know what's in that person's heart. Meanwhile, if you say anything even mildly critical about Israel, Ezra Klein and his ilk could be the first one to say that you're anti-Semitic. They know you're anti-Semitic. They know it. They ain't got to ask. They can read your mind. They can read your horoscope. They can tell your past just because they met you because of one thing you said that they didn't like. And that you can't know what's in their heart, that's a deflection that we never hear at any other time. White liberals certainly never say that whenever a black person is being accused of saying something prejudiced against a white person. Suddenly, they know exactly what's in your heart. White liberals are controlled opposition. That's their job. You have tethers, sellouts, bootlicks, and backstabbers who try to ingratiate themselves with white society by reassuring them, I'm the good black massa. Tethers love to run that game. Well, white liberals do the exact same thing. They try to ingratiate themselves with us by reassuring us that they're the good white advocate. And this is why the orange man being back in power is a good thing, because now everyone who's ever tried to hide what they thought or felt that they needed to sugarcoat it, now they feel they have no choice but to come out and say it out loud, or they feel emboldened like they got the luxury of saying it out loud. They feel like the white right's on a roll with all this anti-black racism, so we got some momentum for me to just say, well, I'm just telling you people some hard truths you don't want to hear. And the people who have been saying that we needed to go easy on these creeps, that they weren't really racist, all of these silly Negroes online who have been attacking the black media because they claim we've been painting with a broad brush, now all of a sudden those clowns are sounding like us. White supremacy is utterly reliant on group solidarity. It can't exist without it. So as long as they can play nice as they scheme and plot against us, then everything's good. But when the landscape changes and that old internecine strife comes back to the surface again, white solidarity fractures. Whiteness is an ethno-political fiction. That's the reason why it is absolutely crucial to them that they control all of the resources and all of the politics. They control the resources and the mechanisms by which those resources are distributed. And it's precisely that monopoly on resources and politics that enables them to institute their system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees that acts as the glue that holds those classified as white together. They make it where only approved of individuals get to live off the fat of the land, while the black people who generated that wealth are locked out of it. The idea of a flat definition of white is a lie agreed upon. The very definition white itself has changed and been altered many times over the centuries. It's been expanded to include certain groups and been amended to exclude others. So Ezra Klein can continue with his apologies for right-wing politics, and Ta-Nehisi Coates can keep pretending that he didn't know these white liberals are the way they are. But if Klein wants to complain about political violence, he can start by telling his new buddies to stop it. The white right has long said that there's no such thing as hate speech or even hate crimes. Charlie Kirk said that. He said hate speech does not exist legally in America. There's ugly speech, there's gross speech, there's evil speech, and all of it protected by the First Amendment. Now, what he thought at the time was he was talking about himself. That's what he really thought. But regardless, if you want to be consistent, then shouldn't Charlie Kirk's sentiment logically go for political violence too? There is no political violence. There's just violence. When someone is killed, whether by the police or by some white supremacist in a church or at a campus event, they're all just killings. The motivation doesn't change the act itself. So, as the white right has said for the longest time about hate crimes, why do we have to create a new category of thought crime? That's what they've been saying for decades. So Ezra Klein should be giving the white right their own advice. Give them Charlie Kirk's advice. But then again, all these overnight fans of Charlie Kirk don't dare mention his actual words, especially not Ezra Klein. His ethics, such as they are quite strange, to a moral person at least. Like most beneficiaries of racial privilege, they start every argument from their own position of power and then try to reverse engineer talking points from there. Well, you can't get to the truth from a standpoint of lies. They're fine with the bigotry and the racism, especially against black people, because they've always been. What they're not fine with is when it affects them. A lot of people are going to try to rewrite the history books now and their own personal biographies and try to make it seem like they were always onto these phony white liberals like Ezra Klein. Oh, we saw through them from the very beginning. That's what a lot of people are trying to do right now. But the reality is they were always on his side. They're just trying to preserve their own pathetic, crumbled credibility because the truth can't be denied anymore. And this is what we in the black grassroots wanted. We wanted things to come to a head. No more running in circles. No one being allowed or even wanting to hide what they think. People are going to be saying exactly what they think, either because they believe that they finally got some leeway, that the social climate is now just agreeable enough with them where they can go ahead and finally say what they've always thought, or in many cases because they feel as if they have to protect their own crumbling position. But either way, they'll be forced to do something or to admit that they've always been on the side of the bad guys. The white liberals are phony. But if you're one of the people who tried to stick up for them, then you are truly foolish. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take...
All right, well, I had to hear that. Nothing particularly new. So now we have folks debating on what white is. Very, very American. And Solid Snake being very Very eloquent. Um, I'm not gonna necessarily deny he's eloquent in that he says the same thing over and over. So apparently he's had a lot of time to perfect his little sound bite laden diatribes. I think if you take Solid Snake out of his comfort zone, which I love doing, he's not so eloquent. He tends to sputter and get mad. Yeah. It's easy to troll Solid Snake from the chat. It should always be fun. Um, so I'm looking at the chat here. Who's white and who's not? The European roots of whiteness. Definitely not that interesting. And see, Lupin is left. Lupin mentioned earlier that he was glad to see me panel hopping. I don't know. You know what? Solid Snake is a good American in the eyes of the far right because he's a good little Negro that basically is a cheerleader for white supremacy. In my opinion, he may be a good American or a well-meaning American, but he is starkly ignorant. He knows nothing. He knows nothing about American history, politics, or not much else other than how to be Solid Snake. So he's good at being Solid Snake. He is yet to grow out of that comfort zone. So, with that being said, it is midday, and my plans are to come back around 4 or 5 o'clock and talk about Clarence Thomas. Some questions that CKJ3 asked about, and figured, well, you know what, it's a good time to go back and revisit some of it, because Clarence Thomas is actually, the question was basically, how do you go from being a Black radical to a Clarence Thomas? And my answer is that the two are literally connected. There is a through line, and a very obvious through line. And oddly enough, Eldridge Cleaver went from a Black radical to conservative. There's some commonalities. There's some through lines, and Black radicals especially are very prone to becoming mainline right-wing conservatives, if not far right-wing conservatives. I consider a lot of Clarence Thomas's, legal opinions, that sort of thing. I consider Thomas Sowell to be far right, to be honest. So we'll talk about that later on this evening. No, I saw Tom over in John's chat about a week ago. So, apparently a lot of people thought that me being on John Galt's channel, they were protesting me being there, so they just unsubscribed. And now that I'm no longer there, a lot of the chickens are coming home to roost. So, what can I say? Just me not being there has made John Galt more successful. I apparently have a lot of power that is unrealized. So we go, folks. Clarence Carter. Is that the saxophonist? That's let me Google that. The name doesn't strike a bell. Let's see here. Clarence Carter. Yeah, okay. He's a blues player. Okay. You know what? I know I'd heard the name, but it didn't ring a bell. Yeah, sure. That's something I can look at. Um, yeah, that's pretty old school stuff there. I'm impressed that you're a fan. All right, folks. Let's see. Yeah, well, CKJ3, I'm glad you're back. I am going to follow up on the questions you had about Clarence Thomas over the weekend. Right about 4 or 5. I went back because I happen to have Corey Robbins' biography of Clarence Thomas. I might even have Clarence Thomas's biography, autobiography. My grandfather's son. Let me see. I might actually have that. Also, there's a YouTube documentary on Clarence Thomas, which I'm going to show as well. It's almost 2 hours. Let me see if I've got my grandfather's son on Kindle. Give me one sec here. Laura Loomer's nose. Well, I'm much more interested in Laura Loomer's lips. Are those her natural lips, or are they are they collagen filled, or whatever they use to, women use to fill their lips? Let's see. No, you know, I thought I had his book on Kindle. I read it. Maybe I read it in like a manual book. Oh, probably probably something attached to Trump is what those lips have been around. That's what I'm guessing. All right, folks. I will cut out. Excuse me. That'll give me time to prepare for this evening show, which I pretty much have prepared. But it has been fun and a good morning. So everybody have a good afternoon, and we will reconvene around probably 4:35 this evening. And the show will be a couple hours. We'll get some questions, and CKJ3, feel free to come up if you want once that show starts. Stanley denied fellatio from Mrs. Loomer 4 times. Well, that is interesting. Would I accept it? That's a good question. I mean, she's not totally ugly. Though she is an acquired taste, I'm sure. And she has kind of bad posture also. Well, to be honest, Dirty, that's what Zhang does. He's actually a pretty good troll. So just let him do what he does. No, Zhang, to be honest, Dirty, Zhang is almost pretty much a day one, believe it or not. He used to appear, on the late night shows. So, I just kind of cut him a bit of slack. Just let him be. Probably. No, I know who Zhang is. No. Don't bother Zhang. If he gets to be too much, and oddly enough, he never gets to be too much. He's actually pretty funny. So it'll be okay. And Zhang, don't be a stranger. I know you're probably busy, but don't be a stranger. Oh, you know what? He has Zhang has a lot of weird hybrid opinions. He is a professional screwball. He will go in odd directions and zig when you think he's going to zag, etc. So Zhang, he's funny. He's a good troll, and he gets a little bit of grace. So it's good to have you aboard, Zhang. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out, folks. I actually have dinner prepared. I actually did a crock pot thing yesterday. So I'm going to go and just kind of hang out, maybe wash some clothes and fold them. And I will see you all this evening. Thank you all. Please make sure you hit the like button on your way out. If you're new, please subscribe. And thank you, Zhang, for subscribing. And make sure you support the host. The Sovereign Beer Fund is looking for investors, especially towards the weekend. And for all the people like CKJ3 and Lupin and Speak Radio and others, thank you all for supporting the show this weekend. It was much appreciated, and you guys keep me charged up to do this day in and day out. So I probably don't express my gratitude, and you too, TMKC, if you're still in the chat. You guys make it worthwhile. So thank you all. Have a good evening. Have a good afternoon. I will see you this evening. So take it easy.